The day my own daughter looked me in the eye and called me a liar, I didn't argue. I simply lowered my head and let her believe I had spent years telling fairy tales. But 6 years later, in a packed NASA auditorium, a decorated astronaut stopped his speech, pointed straight at me, and said, "If Roger Beaumont hadn't believed in a scared little boy when no one else did, I would never have reached the stars." My daughter froze, because in that single moment, everything she thought she knew about her father collapsed. If this story touches something in your heart, I'd love for you to stay with me until the very end. Please, like this video if you believe kindness is never wasted. Subscribe if you enjoy heartfelt family stories, and tell me in the comments where you're watching, from what time it is there, and whether someone has ever believed in you when no one else did. My name is Roger Beaumont, and for almost 32 years, I worked behind the front desk of the Marlowe Public Library in a small town outside Columbus, Ohio. It was not the kind of job that made a man rich. Nobody ever looked at a librarian and thought, "Now there goes someone important." Most days, people noticed me only when their books were overdue, their printer jammed, or their child needed help finding something for a school project. But I loved that place. I loved the smell of old pages after rain. I loved the sound of children whispering too loudly between the shelves. I loved the elderly ladies who came in every Tuesday for mystery novels and gossip. I loved the teenagers who pretended they were too cool to read, then hid in the back with graphic novels tucked inside their textbooks. And most of all, I loved the little corner near the west window where sunlight fell across the science section every afternoon. That was where I kept the astronomy books. Some men kept baseball cards. Some collected fishing rods, old coins, or antique tools. I collected anything that had to do with the sky. Books about planets, old NASA magazines, star charts, newspaper clippings about shuttle launches, a cracked plastic model of the Apollo spacecraft that a retired science teacher gave me after his wife said it was clutter. To me, the sky had never been empty. It was full of questions, full of distance, full of proof that God had made the universe much larger than our disappointments. My late wife, Helen, used to laugh at me for saying things like that. "Roger," she would say, standing in the kitchen with flour on her hands, "you can turn a cloudy night into a sermon." And maybe she was right. Helen passed away when our daughter Claire was only 15. Cancer took her slowly then, all at once. One month, she was planting tulips in the yard. The next, I was standing beside a hospital bed, holding a hand that had already grown too light. After Helen died, the house became too quiet. Claire and I grieved differently. I went silent. Claire became sharp. Not cruel at first, just sharp around the edges like a broken plate someone was still trying to use. She wanted out of our little town, out of our modest house, out of the life where everybody knew everybody and nobody seemed to get very far. "I'm not staying here forever," she told me once when she was 17, sitting at the kitchen table with college brochures spread in front of her. "I never said you had to," I answered. She looked at me with tired eyes. "No, Dad. You just act like this is enough." I remember that sentence because I did not know how to answer it. For me, enough meant a roof that did not leak too badly, food on the table, a job that helped people, and memories of her mother in every room. For Claire, enough meant escape. I did not blame her. Not then. Not even later, when her words grew harder. Maybe children who lose one parent become afraid the remaining parent will trap them in sadness. Maybe every small-town street felt to Claire like a reminder that her mother would never come back. So I tried not to hold on too tightly. I packed her lunches. I helped her with essays. I worked extra shifts when she needed money for school trips. I sat through every choir concert and every award ceremony clapping until my palms stung. But there was one part of my life Claire never understood. Star Night. It started by accident. One October evening, a group of children stayed late at the library because their parents were working second shifts and had not come to pick them up yet. The power flickered during a storm, and one little boy started crying because he was afraid of the dark. So I pulled an astronomy book from the shelf and showed them pictures of the moon. Then I told them that darkness was not always something to fear. Sometimes darkness was the only reason we could see the stars. The next month, I brought my old telescope from home. It was not impressive. The tripod wobbled. One of the adjustment knobs had been replaced with a metal screw from my garage. The lens had a faint scratch near the edge, but it worked well enough if you were patient. We set it up on the library lawn after closing. 7 children came that first night. By the next year, there were 20. I called it Star Night, though it was never official. No grant, no committee, no fancy banner. Just me, a folding table, a dented thermos of coffee packets of hot cocoa, and a line of children waiting for their turn to look at the moon. Some came from comfortable homes. Many did not. I began to recognize the children whose coats were too thin in winter. The ones who saved half their cookies to take home to younger siblings. The ones who flinched when adults raised their voices. The ones who pretended not to care because caring had disappointed them too many times. Those were the children I watched most closely, not because I pitied them, but because I knew something important. A child who has been told they are nothing will sometimes believe the first person who tells them they are more. Claire hated Star Night. At first, she only rolled her eyes. "Dad, it's freezing outside." "Why are you doing this for free?" "Because they like it," I said. "That's not a reason." "It is to me." When she was younger, she would stand by the window and watch us arms crossed, pretending she was annoyed. But once or twice, I caught her smiling when a child gasped after seeing Saturn's rings. As she grew older, that smile disappeared. By the time Claire left for community college, Star Night had become in her mind a symbol of everything wrong with me. "You give everyone else your best," she told me one afternoon. "Then you come home tired and broke." "I gave you my best too, Claire." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You gave me library stories and secondhand furniture." That one hurt. Not because it was entirely false. The furniture was secondhand. The car was old. My shirts often came from clearance racks. I clipped coupons and fixed things with duct tape longer than I should have. But I had thought love counted for more than money. Maybe that was my mistake. I should tell you now, Claire was not evil. I know how easy it would be to make her the villain from the beginning. But real family pain is rarely that simple. Claire was ambitious, smart, beautiful in the same strong-boned way her mother had been. She worked hard. She wanted a better life. She hated feeling small. And somewhere along the way, she decided I was the reason she had felt small. So when she saw me helping other children dream, she did not see kindness. She saw betrayal. I did not understand that then. I only knew that every month when the sky was clear, I carried that old telescope out to the lawn and invited children to look up. That was where I first saw Ethan Brooks. He was 10 years old the first time he came into the library. Small for his age, with a backpack that looked nearly as heavy as he was. His sneakers had duct tape around one sole. His hair stuck up in uneven tufts as though he had combed it with his fingers on the walk over. He did not come to the front desk. He slipped inside like someone trying not to take up space. I watched him from behind my computer as he wandered past the picture books, past the DVDs, past the computers where other kids were playing games. He stopped in the science section, right in front of the astronomy shelf. For nearly 15 minutes, he stood there without touching a single book. Finally, I walked over. "Looking for something special?" I asked. He jumped a little, then shook his head. No, sir. His voice was quiet, guarded. I looked at the shelf, then back at him. You like space? He shrugged. That was the answer children gave when they had been laughed at before. I reached for a book with a blue cover showing the Earth from orbit. This one has pictures from the International Space Station, I said. Hard to believe people live up there, isn't it? His eyes moved to the cover. Just for a second, something lit inside them. Then it vanished. My teacher said, I'm behind in reading. He muttered. Those books are probably too hard. I felt something twist in my chest. Well, I said gently, hard books don't mind waiting. And sometimes, if you open them slowly, they open something in you too. He looked at me like he was trying to decide whether I was making fun of him. I handed him the book. He took it with both hands. What's your name? I asked. Ethan, he said. Ethan Brooks. That name meant nothing to me then. Just another child in a worn-out hoodie standing in a small-town library afraid to want something bigger than the life he had been given. I had no way of knowing that one day the whole country would know his name. I had no way of knowing my own daughter would one day call him a lie. And I surely had no way of knowing that the quiet boy holding that book would become the man who stood beneath the NASA lights and gave my broken heart back its dignity. Ethan Brooks did not become a regular at the library right away. Children like Ethan rarely trust kindness the first time it is offered. They wait for the catch. They wait for the laugh. They wait for the adult to lose patience and prove what they already believe about the world. So that first afternoon, he took the book about the International Space Station, carried it to a table near the back wall, and sat with his shoulders hunched, as if he expected someone to come snatch it away. I pretended not to watch him. That is something I learned over the years. Some children need attention. Others need the dignity of not being stared at while they try. For nearly an hour, Ethan turned the pages slowly. Sometimes his lips moved as he sounded out words. Sometimes he skipped whole sections and just looked at the pictures. Once, he leaned so close to a photograph of Earth from orbit that his nose nearly touched the page. When he brought the book back to the desk, I expected him to slide it across silently and leave. Instead, he asked, Do astronauts really sleep floating? They do, I said. They strap themselves in so they don't bump into things. His eyes narrowed with serious concern. What if they sneeze? I smiled. Then I imagined the sneeze goes floating too. He tried not to smile back but failed. That was the beginning. After that, Ethan came in 2 or 3 times a week. Always alone. Always with that same heavy backpack and those taped sneakers. He never asked for help directly, but he hovered near the astronomy shelf until I suggested another book. Some were too difficult for him. I could see it in the way his forehead wrinkled after a few pages. But he kept trying. That mattered more than speed. One Thursday, I found him sitting on the floor between the shelves with a book open on his knees. His finger was resting under the word trajectory. That one's a mouthful, I said. He looked embarrassed and started to close the book. Don't close it, I told him. That's a good word. I can't say it. Sure you can. Trajectory. He repeated it slower than a snowfall. Trajectory. There you go. What does it mean? It's the path something takes when it's moving through the air or space. He looked down at the diagram of a rocket launch. So if something starts low, it can still go high. I felt that question land somewhere deep. Yes, I said. That is exactly what it means. He nodded, but not like a child learning vocabulary. He nodded like he had just been handed evidence. Over time, I learned pieces of his story, though never all at once. His father had died in a construction accident when Ethan was 6. His mother had disappeared not long after that. No one said where she went, at least not in a way Ethan believed. Since then, he had lived with his grandmother Grace Brooks in a small rental house near the railroad tracks. Grace was a thin woman with tired hands and a voice that sounded soft even when she was angry. She came into the library one evening near closing time, looking for Ethan. I recognized her immediately by the worry in her eyes. "Mr. Beaumont?" she asked. "That's me. I'm Grace Brooks, Ethan's grandmother." I reached out to shake her hand. Her fingers were cold. "He's a good boy looking for Ethan." I recognized her immediately by the worry in her eyes. "Mr. Beaumont?" she asked. "That's me. I'm Grace Brooks, Ethan's grandmother." I reached out to shake her hand. Her fingers were cold. "He's a good boy," I said. Her eyes filled before I had finished the sentence, and she looked away quickly. "He is," she whispered. "He just doesn't hear that enough." That told me more than any long explanation could have. At school, Ethan was not considered promising. He struggled with reading. He was awkward with other children. He got nervous when called on, and nervous children often look defiant to adults who do not have time to understand them. A teacher once told Grace that Ethan needed realistic goals. Grace repeated that sentence to me like it had been carved into her chest. "He told his class he wanted to be an astronaut," she said. They laughed. Even the teacher smiled like it was cute and sad. I felt anger rise in me, but I kept my voice calm. What did Ethan do? He stopped talking about it, but he had not stopped dreaming. Not completely. Dreams do not always die when people laugh at them. Sometimes they just go underground. I began saving things for him. A magazine article about Mars rovers. A newspaper clipping about a satellite launch. A children's biography of Mae Jemison. A battered book about Neil Armstrong that had been checked out so many times the binding was held together with library tape. Every time Ethan came in, I gave him something small. "Thought you might like this. Found this in the donation box. This one has diagrams." "You like diagrams?" He always accepted the offerings quietly, but his eyes gave him away. Then came the first star night he attended. It was late November, cold enough for everyone's breath to show. I had set up the old telescope on the library lawn, next to a folding table with cocoa packets, marshmallows, and a stack of paper cups. A dozen children were already there, stomping their feet against the cold. Ethan stood apart from them near the flagpole, hands buried in his pockets. "You want a turn?" I asked. He shook his head. "You sure Jupiter is showing off tonight?" "I don't know how." "You look through the eyepiece. The telescope does the hard part." He hesitated. "What if I mess it up?" That question told me the kind of world he had been living in. A world where even looking through a telescope felt like something he could fail at. "You can't mess up, Wonder," I said. He looked at me. I stepped aside and adjusted the telescope lower for him. "Go ahead." He bent slowly, one eye squeezed shut, the other pressed to the eyepiece. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he whispered, "Oh, just one sound." But I have never forgotten it. It was the sound of a locked door opening. He pulled back, then leaned in again. "Is that real? As real as you are? Those little dots, moons? Jupiter has moons more than you can count on both hands." He stared again, completely still. The other children were laughing, waiting for Coco, chasing each other across the grass. But Ethan seemed to have left Ohio altogether. His body was standing on the library lawn, but his mind had gone somewhere far beyond us. After that night, something in him changed. Not all at once. Life does not work that neatly. His clothes were still worn. He still struggled with long words. Children at school still laughed sometimes. But now when he came into the library, he walked a little straighter. He started asking questions. How fast does a rocket go? Can astronauts be scared? What happens if you're poor but you're good at science? That last one nearly broke me, I answered carefully. Then you study hard. You ask for help. You find people who know things you don't, and you do not let poverty convince you it owns your future. He looked down at his hands. People like me don't go to space. I leaned across the desk and lowered my voice. Ethan, listen to me. The sky does not check your address before it lets you look up. He stared at me for a long time. I thought the words had passed through him like any other adult encouragement. I was wrong. Years later, I would learn that he wrote that sentence down. He had a small spiral notebook, blue cover, bent corners pages, already curling from use. I saw it once when it fell out of his backpack. He snatched it up so fast I thought maybe it was a diary. What's that? I asked. Nothing. Important nothing. He hugged it against his chest. Just notes. I did not press. I had no idea that inside that notebook in careful, uneven handwriting, Ethan was recording every sentence I gave him. Not just facts about stars or rockets, but the words he needed to survive. You can't mess up wonder. Hard books don't mind waiting. The sky does not check your address. He was building a future out of borrowed books and sentences no one else thought mattered. At home, Claire noticed. She was 20 by then, commuting to college and working part-time at a clothing store in the mall. She came home tired, smelling faintly of perfume samples and fast food from the food court. One evening, she found me at the kitchen table repairing a loose telescope screw. She dropped her keys into a bowl and sighed. Is that thing broken again? Just a little stubborn. You should throw it away. It still works. Everything still works to you, Dad. Even things that are falling apart. I glanced up, but her face was not playful. She opened the refrigerator, then closed it harder than necessary. That boy was at the library again. Ethan. See, you even say his name like he's family. I set the screwdriver down. He's a child who needs encouragement. Claire turned toward me. And I needed a father who wasn't always busy saving every sad kid in town. Her words stunned me. I was there for you, I said quietly. You were physically there, she replied. That's not the same. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to list the lunches, the bills, the concerts, the nights I stayed up when she had a fever, the mornings I went to work grieving so she could keep living. But pain does not listen well to evidence. So I said only, I'm sorry you feel that way. She gave a bitter laugh. You always say things like that. Soft things. Library things. Then she walked upstairs. I sat there alone with the telescope screw between my fingers and realized something frightening. While I had been helping Ethan believe he could rise, my own daughter had begun believing I had left her behind. And that was the crack in our family that would only grow wider. Claire was 21 when the fight about the house began. By then, she had finished 2 years at community college and had set her heart on transferring to a private university in Chicago. She said it as if Chicago were not a city but a rescue boat. Every time she spoke about it, her whole face changed. Her eyes became brighter, her voice became faster. She talked about internships, networking events, tall buildings, apartments with exposed brick classmates whose parents knew people. I wanted to be proud. I was proud. But pride can sit beside fear. Any parent knows that. You can want your child to fly and still worry about the storm outside. One night in early spring, Claire came home with a folder tucked under her arm. I was at the kitchen table, sorting library receipts and trying to stretch my paycheck across utilities, groceries, property taxes, and the small repairs that old houses always seem to demand. She did not say hello. She placed the folder in front of me. I got accepted, she said. I looked up. Claire, that's wonderful. For fall semester. I stood to hug her, but she stepped back. Not cruelly, just quickly, like affection would slow down the business part of the conversation. "There's more," she said. I opened the folder. Tuition numbers stared back at me like a language I did not speak. The amount was more than I made in a year. I read it twice, hoping the second time would be kinder. "They offered some aid," Claire said. "Not enough." But I've been thinking. I already knew from her tone that this was not a small thought. She sat across from me, folded her hands, and spoke like someone making a presentation. "If we sell the house, you could move into a smaller apartment, maybe closer to the library. You don't need all this space, Dad. It's just you." Just you. 2 words, but they made the room feel suddenly colder. I looked around the kitchen, the chipped yellow tiles Helen had picked, the window where she used to grow basil, the doorway where Claire at grow basil, the doorway where Claire at age 6 had measured her height with pencil marks I could never bring myself to paint over. "This house is not just space," I said. Claire's mouth tightened. "I knew you'd say that. It's your mother's home. It was Mom's home. Age 6 had measured her height with pencil marks I could never bring myself to paint over. "This house is not just space," I said. Claire's mouth tightened. "I knew you'd say that. It's your mother's home. It was Mom's home," she said. "She's gone." I flinched. She noticed, but she did not stop. Maybe she thought she couldn't afford to. "I'm not trying to hurt you," she continued. "I'm trying to build a future. And you always told me education matters. It does. Then help me. I have helped you." "With scraps," she snapped. Then she took a breath, lowering her voice. "I'm sorry, but that's what it feels like. Scraps. Little checks. Old car. Used laptop. Discount everything." I looked at the tuition paper again. Numbers did not care about love. They did not care how many nights I had stayed awake with a sick child or how many double shifts I had taken. Numbers simply stood there hard and clean, telling a man what he could not do. "I can't sell the house," I said. Claire stared at me. "Can't or won't?" "Both." Her eyes filled, but the tears did not soften her. They sharpened her. "Because of Star Night." I said nothing. She laughed once. "Unbelievable! This house is where we store everything. The telescope, the donated books, the folding chairs. Children come here sometimes when the library lawn isn't available. Grace Brooks brings Ethan here for cocoa when it's too cold after." "There it is," Claire said. I stopped. "There it is," she repeated, standing now. "Ethan, Grace, the library kids, always someone else. That is not fair. No, Dad. What's not fair is watching you play hero to strangers while your own daughter has to beg." "You are not begging. We are talking." "No, I'm begging. I'm begging you to choose me for once." The words hit me harder than anger would have, because under the bitterness, I heard the little girl who had lost her mother, the girl who wanted proof that she still came first in someone's life. I wanted to tell her she did. I wanted to tell her there had never been a day she was not first in my heart. But she was asking me to prove love by destroying the last home her mother had left behind. "I cannot sell it," I said quietly. Claire nodded, but her face changed in a way I had never seen before. Something closed. "Then don't ever tell me you sacrificed for me," she said. She went upstairs and I heard her door shut. Not slam, shut. Somehow that was worse. After that night, Claire began treating the house like an enemy. She stopped eating dinner with me. She stayed out late. She took extra shifts. When she did speak, it was practical and cold. Rent, tuition, applications, deadlines, money, Always money. And I did what I had always done when I felt helpless. I worked more. I picked up weekend hours at the library. I repaired books for a neighboring branch for a small stipend. I mowed 2 lawns that summer for elderly patrons who insisted on paying me in cash. I sold a few of Helen's old collectibles, but only the ones without memories attached, which meant I did not make much. Then Grace Brooks got sick. She came to the library one afternoon, looking gray around the mouth, one hand pressed against the edge of the circulation desk. Ethan was in school. She said she only needed to sit for a minute. I brought her water. "Have you seen a doctor?" I asked. She waved me off. "Doctors cost money. That cough has been hanging on for weeks. It's not the cough I'm worried about." She did not want to tell me. Pride can be the last coat a poor person owns. But eventually, piece by piece, the truth came out. Grace had missed work cleaning offices because her blood pressure had become dangerous. Medication cost more than she could manage. Rent was behind. The landlord had started leaving notes. Ethan knew some of it, not all. She was trying to keep the worst from him. "He's been doing so well," she whispered. "I can't let him see everything fall apart again." I thought of Ethan bent over astronomy books asking if poor people could be good at science. I thought of the way he looked through the telescope, as if he had finally found proof that the world was bigger than his pain. So I helped, not loudly, not foolishly, just enough to keep the lights on and the medicine filled. A little cash for Grace's prescriptions, a grocery card tucked into a library book, a call to a church friend who knew someone who could delay an eviction notice. Grace resisted at first. "I can't pay you back," she said. "I didn't ask you to. I don't take charity." "Then call it an investment." In what I looked toward the children's section where Ethan was sitting with a notebook open beside a book about rockets. "In trajectory," I said. Grace cried then. Quietly. Into a napkin she tried to hide in her palm. I should have told Claire. Maybe that was my mistake. But every time I imagined explaining it, I heard her voice from that night. "I'm begging you to choose me for once." How could I tell my daughter, who already believed I gave too much to strangers, that I was giving even more? So I kept it hidden. I told myself it was temporary. Just a few weeks. Just until Grace got steady. Just until Claire cooled down. Just until I found the right words. The right words never came. What came instead was a bank statement. Claire found it on the kitchen counter one Saturday morning. I had meant to file it away, but I left it beside my coffee mug when the phone rang at the library and I rushed out for an emergency plumbing leak in the children's restroom. When I returned home, Claire was waiting. The statement was in her hand. Her face was pale. "Who is Grace Brooks?" she asked. My stomach dropped. "Claire? Who is she?" "A friend from the library." "A friend?" She looked down at the paper again. "You transferred money to her. More than once. It's not what you think. Really. Because what I think is that you told me you couldn't help me, but you had money for some woman and her grandson." I reached for the statement, but she pulled it back. "Claire Grace is ill. She's raising Ethan alone. They were about to lose. I don't care," she shouted. The words echoed through the kitchen. Then her eyes widened, as if even she had not expected them to come out so naked. But she did not take them back. "I am your daughter," she said, voice trembling. "Your daughter, not Ethan, not every broken child who walks into your precious library. Me. I know that. No, you don't. You don't know that. Because every time I need you to show it, you turn around and give yourself to someone else." I felt my own voice begin to shake. Helping them does not mean I love you less. It does when there's nothing left for me. That silenced me. Because the terrible thing was, From where Claire stood, maybe it looked true. She did not see the nights I sat alone with bills spread out like accusations. She did not see me choosing between repairing the furnace and paying part of her tuition. She did not see the quiet fear of being a father who could love deeply but still fail financially. She saw a man saying no to his own child and yes to someone else. And once that story formed in her mind, no explanation could compete with it. Claire tossed the bank statement onto the table. "Keep your house," she said. "Keep your telescope. Keep your little lost boy." Then she picked up her purse and walked out. Through the window, I watched her car reverse too quickly out of the driveway. The tires scraped the curb. For 1 second, I wanted to run after her, but I didn't. I stood in the kitchen where Helen used to sing while washing dishes, and I felt something in our family tear. Not loudly, not all at once, just enough that from that day forward, every conversation between Claire and me had a hidden wound beneath it. And Ethan Brooks, that quiet boy with taped sneakers and a notebook full of borrowed courage, had no idea he had become the name my daughter would one day use as proof that I had never loved her enough. The night Ethan nearly gave up rain came down so hard it turned the library windows silver. It was one of those cold Ohio rains that did not fall gently. It slapped against the glass, rattled the gutters, and made every car passing outside sound like it was driving through a river. By 6 o'clock, most people had gone home. The children's section was empty. The computers were dark. Even Mrs. Donnelly, who usually stayed until closing to read crime novels, had packed her umbrella and said, "Roger, only a fool would stay out in weather like this." I smiled and told her to get home safe. I should have left early too. But I stayed. I cannot explain why, except to say that sometimes your heart knows someone is coming before your eyes do. I was shelving returned books near the science section when the front door burst open. Wind pushed rain across the entrance mat. Ethan stood there soaked from head to toe, clutching something under his jacket. "Ethan!" I hurried toward him. "Good Lord, son, you're drenched." He did not answer. Water dripped from his hair onto his cheeks, but I knew right away not all of it was rain. He looked smaller than usual. Not younger exactly, but folded in on himself, as if something inside him had collapsed. "What happened?" I asked. He shook his head. The thing under his jacket shifted. I looked down and saw cardboard tape and 2 plastic bottles tied together with string. A model rocket, or what was left of one. One fin had torn off. The nose cone was crushed. Red marker had bled down the side from the rain, turning the cardboard streaky and pink. "I made it for science fair," he said. His voice was flat. I took the model carefully like it was something living that had been hurt. "It's a fine rocket." "No, it's not. It got damaged in the rain. It was damaged before." He wiped his nose with his sleeve, angry at himself for crying. "Some boys took it after school. They said it looked like trash. They threw it in a puddle." I felt my jaw tighten. Ethan stared at the floor. "They said I should build something I understand, like a garbage truck." There are moments when an adult must choose between anger and usefulness. My anger would not help him, not yet. So I set the rocket on the desk and reached for a towel from the supply closet. "Come here," I said. "Dry your hair first." "I don't want a towel." "You'll catch cold. I don't care. I care." That stopped him. He looked at me with wet, wounded eyes, and for a second I saw just how exhausted that child was. Exhausted from being poor. Exhausted from being laughed at. Exhausted from carrying a dream everyone treated like a joke. I draped the towel over his shoulders. He stood still. Then he whispered, "Maybe they're right." I said nothing. He went on, words spilling faster now. "Maybe I'm stupid. Maybe astronauts don't come from houses like mine. Maybe I'm just making everybody feel sorry for me. You are not stupid. You don't know that. Yes, I do. You're just saying it because you're nice. I knelt in front of him so we were eye to eye. Ethan being nice is telling someone what they want to hear. I'm telling you what I've seen. His lips trembled. What have you seen? I've seen a boy who comes into this library after school instead of running the streets. I've seen a boy who sounds out words that scare him. I've seen a boy who asks better questions than most adults. I've seen a boy who looks at the moon like it is calling his name. His face twisted, and he turned away. They laughed at me. I know. My teacher didn't even stop them. That hurt more than I expected. Children can survive other children being cruel. But when the adults look away, shame becomes heavier. I pulled out the chair beside him. Sit with me. That hurt more than I expected. Children can survive other children being cruel. But when the adults look away, shame becomes heavier. I pulled out the chair beside him. Sit with me. He sat. The rain kept hammering the windows. The whole library felt like a ship in a storm. I picked up the broken rocket and examined it. Do you know what engineers do when something breaks? Throw it away. No. They study why it failed. He sniffed. This failed because I'm bad at making things. Maybe. Or maybe the fins need stronger support. Maybe the center of gravity is off. Maybe the material got wet. Maybe the design needs another version. Another version. Of course, rockets are not born perfect. Neither are people. He looked at the model again. I worked on it for 3 weeks. Then we will not let 3 cruel boys decide what 3 weeks of work means. For the first time that evening, he seemed to breathe. I walked to the storage room and brought out scissors tape, craft sticks, glue, and a few pieces of stiff poster board left from a summer reading display. I set them on the table. Ethan stared at the supplies. You're helping me fix it? No, I said. I'm helping you learn how to fix it. That mattered. I could see it in his face. We worked for nearly an hour. I did not do the work for him. I held pieces steady. I asked questions. I showed him how to reinforce the fins. I explained balance by placing a pencil under the rocket body and letting him find the point where it tipped. Slowly, his hands stopped shaking. At some point, he pulled the blue spiral notebook from his backpack and began sketching improvements. The notebook was already damp around the edges. You draw well, I said. He shrugged. But this time, I saw pride trying to hide behind the shrug. When the rocket stood upright again, patched and imperfect, but stronger than before, Ethan touched one of the fins gently. It still looks rough, he said. Many things that fly look rough before they're finished. He looked at me. Do you really think I could do something like that? Build real rockets. I think if you don't quit, you could go farther than anyone who laughed at you can imagine. His eyes searched my face, desperate and doubtful. What if I try and still fail? Then you learn. Then you try differently. What if everybody keeps laughing? Then let them laugh from the ground. The corner of his mouth moved almost a smile. I leaned closer. Listen to me carefully, Ethan. No one gets to decide the height of your life except you. Not those boys. Not a teacher who forgot her duty. Not your address. Not your bank account. Not even your fear. If you keep looking up one day, you may find that the sky was never a ceiling at all. He stared at me as if the room had gone silent around those words. Then he opened his notebook. What did you say? Which part? The last part. I repeated it slowly. The sky was never a ceiling. He wrote it down. I did not understand then. To me, it was just something I said to comfort a hurting child on a rainy night. To Ethan, it became a rope. A little after 7, the library door opened again. Claire walked in. She had a raincoat over her work uniform and irritation all over her face. She must have seen my truck still parked outside and come to find out why I was late. Her eyes moved from me to Ethan, then to the craft supplies scattered across the table. "What is this?" she asked. I stood. "Claire, this is Ethan. You've seen him before." "I know who he is." Ethan lowered his head. Claire glanced at the repaired rocket and gave a short, tired laugh. "Dad, seriously, you missed dinner because you're playing NASA with a kid." The words landed badly. Ethan's shoulders stiffened. I said, "Claire, what I'm just asking." She looked at Ethan not with hatred, but with the careless sharpness of someone who did not understand how deep a small cut could go. "Don't tell me you've got him believing he's going to the moon now. What I'm just asking." She looked at Ethan not with hatred, but with the careless sharpness of someone who did not understand how deep a small cut could go. "Don't tell me you've got him believing he's going to the moon now." "Enough," I said. She blinked. I rarely used that tone, but she was already wounded from years of thinking she had to compete with every child I helped, and wounded people often swing before they see who they are hitting. She turned back to me. "You live in fairy tales, Dad. You always have. You tell sad kids they can touch the stars, and then you come home with overdue bills and act like Hope pays property tax." Ethan stood abruptly. "I should go." "No," I said. "Wait, Grace is coming. I can walk. In this rain, absolutely not." But he was already stuffing the notebook into his backpack. His face had gone closed again the way it had been the first day I met him. Claire looked away, uncomfortable now, but pride would not let her apologize. I grabbed my coat and keys. "I'll drive you." "No, sir," Ethan said quietly. "It's okay." "Ethan." He looked up at me. His eyes were red, but there was something else there too. Not anger. Decision. "Thank you for helping me fix it." He picked up the rocket and held it under his jacket. Then he left before I could stop him. The bell over the library door rang once. I watched through the glass as he ran into the rain, a small figure carrying a patched cardboard rocket like it was the last fragile piece of his future. Claire stood behind me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said softer, but still cold, "You can't save everyone." I turned to her. "No," I said, "but that doesn't excuse me from helping the ones placed in front of me." Her face hardened again. "And what about the daughter placed in front of you?" I had no answer that would not hurt us both. 2 days later, Ethan and Grace were gone. I found out from a neighbor near the railroad tracks that Grace's landlord had finally forced them out after a dispute over back rent and repairs. Someone said they had family in Indiana. Someone else said Kentucky. No one knew for certain. I searched for them. I called numbers that had been disconnected. I asked at the school. I drove past their rental house 3 times as if they might appear if I loved them enough. They did not. A week after they disappeared, I found something tucked between 2 astronomy books on the return cart. An envelope. My name was written on the front in uneven child handwriting. Mr. Beaumont. I reached for it, but before I could open it, the phone rang, a patron needed help, and the envelope disappeared beneath a stack of returned books. By the end of the day, it was gone. I thought maybe I had misplaced it. I thought maybe it would turn up. I thought many things back then that were kinder than the truth. What I did not know was that Claire had found that letter before I did, and for reasons born from jealousy, pain, and a daughter's terrible fear of being replaced, she hid the only goodbye Ethan ever gave me. After Ethan and Grace disappeared, The library felt different. That may sound strange. Libraries are full of people coming and going. Children outgrow story hour. Teenagers graduate. Families move away. Old patrons pass on. A librarian learns over time that every familiar face is only borrowed. But Ethan's absence left a particular silence. Every afternoon, around 4, I would glance toward the front doors without meaning to. I would hear a child's sneakers squeak on the floor and look up expecting to see that thin boy with the heavy backpack and serious eyes. I would pass the science section and notice the gap where his favorite books used to sit. I would find myself saving articles for him, then remember there was nowhere to send them. For the first few weeks I searched. I called the elementary school. They told me Ethan's records had been transferred but would not say where. I understood privacy rules, but understanding did not make it easier. I called the number Grace had once written on a library card application. Disconnected. I drove by the rental house near the railroad tracks. The windows were dark, the porch empty, the old curtain in the front room gone. A neighbor in a red bathrobe told me they had left before sunrise. "Poor woman looked sick," she said, folding her arms against the cold. Boy carried most of the bags himself. Did they say where they were going? She shook her head. Some cousin, maybe, or a shelter. Hard to keep track these days. Hard to keep track. As if Grace and Ethan were loose papers blown down a street. I went back to my truck and sat there with both hands on the steering wheel. The sky was gray. Freight cars clanged on the tracks nearby. I remember thinking that I had spent years telling a boy the world was bigger than his pain, and then the world had swallowed him without leaving me an address. For months, I hoped he would write. Every time mail arrived at the library, I checked the stack twice. Every time the phone rang, some foolish part of me expected to hear his voice asking whether Jupiter was visible that week. Nothing came. The envelope I had glimpsed on the return cart haunted me. I asked the staff if anyone had seen it. I searched the lost and found drawer. I emptied recycling bins. I looked between books under desks inside file folders. I told myself maybe I had imagined it. Maybe exhaustion and grief had made me see what I wanted. But I knew Ethan's handwriting. I had seen it often enough in that blue notebook. Mr. Beaumont. Those 2 words stayed with me longer than I care to admit. Claire did not ask about him. In fact, she seemed relieved by his disappearance. Not openly, of course. She did not say she was glad a poor boy and his sick grandmother had vanished from town. Claire was not heartless in that simple way. But the tension in her shoulders eased. Her voice became less sharp around the edges. It was as if Ethan's absence had removed a rival she never should have believed existed. She transferred to the university in Chicago the next fall. Not the private school she first wanted. We could not make the numbers work even with loans. Instead, she found a public program with a strong business department. It was still expensive, still far from home, still a world away from Marlowe. The morning I drove her to the bus station, she wore a navy coat and carried 2 suitcases, both too full to zip without sitting on them. I tried to make conversation. "You have your charger?" "Yes." "Your documents?" "Yes." "Emergency cash, Dad." I stopped. We stood beneath the awning while buses groaned and sighed around us. "I'm proud of you," I said. She looked at me then. For a moment, I saw my little girl, the one who used to run into my arms with grass stains on her knees, the one who once believed I could fix anything. Then the moment passed. "Thank you," she said. I wanted to hug her. I did not know whether she wanted me to, so I waited. That was another mistake, perhaps. Parents sometimes think giving space is respect when a child is secretly begging to be held. Her bus was called. She picked up her suitcases. "Claire," I said. She turned. "If you ever need anything—" "I know," she interrupted, but I was not sure she did. After she left, I drove home alone. The house seemed larger than before. Her bedroom remained exactly as she left it for almost a year. I did not move the half-empty bottle of perfume from her dresser. I did not take down the college acceptance letters taped to her mirror. I did not wash the sweatshirt she had tossed over the desk chair. A man can live in a house and still be surrounded by ghosts who are very much alive. Years passed. Claire built the life she wanted. Slowly at first, then quickly. She finished school. She got a job in marketing. She moved from a small apartment with noisy pipes to a better one near the lake. She met Daniel Harper, a quiet, decent man who worked in insurance and treated her with patience I did not always deserve to witness. They married in a garden outside Cleveland. I walked her down the aisle. She looked beautiful, strong, controlled, not crying. Claire had trained herself not to cry in public. I, on the other hand, nearly lost my composure when I saw Helen's pearl earrings fastened to her ears. During the reception, Daniel placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "She talks about you more than she admits." I wanted to believe that. "Good things?" I asked. He smiled kindly. "Complicated things." That sounded more honest. A few years later, Olivia was born. My granddaughter came into the world with a cry loud enough to command the hospital room. Claire looked exhausted and terrified, holding that tiny bundle like love itself had become breakable. When I held Olivia for the first time, something in me healed and broke at the same time. She had Claire's eyes. For a while, Olivia brought Claire and me closer. Babies have a way of softening old grudges because they need everyone. Claire called to ask about Fever's Lullaby's old family recipes. She let me visit. She even laughed once when I bought Olivia a plush moon and said every child needed one. But closeness built on a baby's needs is fragile. As Olivia grew, Claire's old walls returned. She did not like when I talked about the library too much. She liked it even less when I talked about Star Night. By then, Star Night had faded. Not officially. It had never been official. It simply became harder to maintain. My knees hurt in winter. The new library director wanted more structured programming with liability forms and approved budgets. Children had phones now. Fewer were impressed by an old telescope on a lawn. Still, once or twice a year, I carried the telescope out. For Ethan. For myself. For any child who still needed to hear that, darkness was not always the enemy. I retired at 62. The library held a small party in the meeting room. Sheet cake punch, a card signed by staff and patrons. Mrs. Donnelly, much older but still reading mysteries, kissed my cheek and told me no one would ever know the Dewey Decimal System like I did. Claire came with Daniel and little Olivia, who was then 5. During the speeches, the director mentioned Star Night. "Roger taught generations of children to look up," she said. Everyone clapped. Claire smiled politely, but I knew her well enough to see discomfort in the set of her jaw. On the drive home after the party, she said, "They made you sound like some kind of saint." I don't think anyone believed that. You enjoy it, though. Enjoy what? Being seen that way. I looked out the passenger window at the passing fields. I enjoyed helping children, I said. That's all. She did not answer. After retirement, my world grew smaller. Mornings became slow. I made coffee, read the paper, checked the weather, and looked at the old telescope standing in the corner of the dining room like a loyal dog too old to hunt. Some days, I polished it. Some days, I talked to it, which I admit sounds lonely because it was. Claire wanted me to sell it. "You could get money for that antique," she said once. "It's not worth much." "Then why keep it?" I ran my hand over the scratched metal tube. "Because it still works." She sighed. "You say that about everything." Maybe I did, but I had to believe some things still worked. Telescopes, memories, kindness, fathers and daughters even when they had forgotten how to speak without bleeding. Every now and then I searched for Ethan Brooks online. At first, nothing. Then too much. Hundreds of names. Athletes, accountants, students, men with mugshots, men with wedding websites, men who were too old or too young. I never found my Ethan. Still, I believed he was somewhere. I imagined him as a mechanic, maybe building engines with those careful hands, or a science teacher, or perhaps just a good man who looked up at the night sky now and then and remembered an old librarian who once patched a cardboard rocket in a storm. That would have been enough for me. Truly, it would have. I did not need him to become famous. I did not need proof that my words had mattered. I only wanted to believe the world had not crushed him. But Claire mistook that belief for obsession. Whenever Ethan's name slipped out, her face hardened. "Dad, you have to let that go. I just wonder what happened to him. You wonder too much. He was a good boy. He was a kid from the library 20 years ago. Some people stay with you." She would look at me then with something close to anger, but not quite. Something sadder. "Yes," she said once, "they certainly do." I did not understand what she meant until much later. To me, Ethan was a lost child I had failed to find. To Claire, Ethan was the ghost standing between us. And the saddest part is this: while I kept waiting for news of a boy who had vanished, I did not see that my daughter was still waiting for proof that I would search just as hard for her. The summer Olivia turned 12, Claire brought her family back to Marlow for a weekend visit. By then, my house had begun to show its age in ways I could no longer hide. The porch boards groaned under every step. The paint near the back windows had started peeling in long white strips. The upstairs bathroom faucet whistled when turned too far left. The maple tree Helen and I had planted after Claire was born had grown enormous, its roots lifting one corner of the front walkway. To me, the house looked tired, but faithful. To Claire, it looked like evidence. She stepped out of Daniel's SUV wearing sunglasses and a linen blouse the color of cream. Daniel carried their bags. Olivia jumped out behind them with a backpack, a ponytail, and the restless energy of a child who had spent too long in a car. "Grandpa!" she shouted. That one word made the whole porch feel young again. I opened my arms, and Olivia ran into them. She was nearly as tall as my shoulder, all knees and elbows, but she still hugged with the full force of a child who had not learned to ration love. "There's my stargazer," I said. Claire heard it and gave the smallest sigh. Olivia pulled back. "Mom said you still have the telescope." "I do. Can we use it?" I glanced at Claire, hoping not to start trouble before they had even unpacked. Claire removed her sunglasses. "Maybe later. We just got here." But Olivia was already looking past me into the house. Is it looking past me into the house? Is it in the dining room? It is. She slipped inside before anyone could stop her. Daniel smiled apologetically. "Long drive. She's been talking about you since Dayton. That's good to hear. In the dining room." "It is." She slipped inside before anyone could stop her. Daniel smiled apologetically. "Long drive? She's been talking about you since Dayton. That's good to hear." Claire kissed my cheek. It was quick and cool. "Hi, Dad." "Hi, sweetheart." She stiffened slightly at the old name, but did not correct me. The first day went better than expected. We grilled hamburgers in the backyard. Daniel fixed the loose latch on my gate without being asked. Claire walked through the house, making little comments she probably thought were harmless. "You really should update these curtains. Dad, this carpet is older than Olivia. Have you thought about moving somewhere easier to maintain?" I answered lightly each time because I had learned that some conversations are traps with polite carpeting laid over them. But Olivia saved the day. She asked about everything. Was this Mom's room? Did Grandma Helen plant those flowers? Did you really work at the library for 30 years? What was Mom like when she was my age? That last question made Claire freeze. I looked at her first. May I? She shrugged. So I told Olivia about little Claire climbing the maple tree in a Sunday dress. About the summer she decided she was going to be a veterinarian and tried to feed crackers to every squirrel in the yard. About the time she cried because she got a B on a spelling test and Helen told her perfection was a lonely cage. Olivia laughed. Daniel laughed too. Claire did not laugh, but her expression softened for a moment. After dinner, the sky cleared. It had rained earlier in the day, leaving the air clean and damp. Fireflies blinked near the fence. The first stars began to appear one by one, timid at first, then brighter as the blue drained out of the evening. Olivia found me in the dining room standing beside the telescope. Grandpa, she whispered, as though we were planning a crime. Now I looked toward the kitchen where Claire was helping Daniel dry dishes. Ask your mother. Olivia groaned. She'll say no. Ask anyway. She dragged herself to the doorway. Mom, can Grandpa show me the stars? Claire rinsed a plate slowly. It's late. It's not even 9. You'll get mosquito bites. I have spray. You'll be tired tomorrow. I'm 12, not 80. Daniel coughed into his hand to hide a laugh. Claire shot him a look. Then she glanced at me and the telescope. Something moved behind her eyes, old and guarded. Fine, she said. 20 minutes. Olivia nearly danced. I carried the telescope outside. It felt heavier than it used to. Olivia noticed and grabbed the tripod legs. I can help. Together, we set it up on the lawn near the same patch of grass where Star Night had been held so many times. The library was miles away, but in my mind, I could see those children lining up with paper cups of cocoa, their faces lifted to a sky that asked nothing of them except wonder. Olivia knelt beside me as I adjusted the lens. What are we looking at? The moon first, then maybe Saturn if the trees don't block it. She leaned close. Did you show Mom this stuff? When she was little, yes. Did she like it? I hesitated. She liked being with her mother. Helen loved the moon. Olivia looked toward the house. Claire stood at the kitchen window, arms crossed, watching us. Mom says you tell stories that make things sound prettier than they were. That hurt, though I knew Olivia had not meant it to. Your mother remembers some things differently than I do. Like what I focused the telescope buying myself a few seconds. Like why I kept this old thing. Olivia touched the scratched metal tube. Because it still works? I smiled. You know me too well. She looked through the eyepiece and gasped. There it was again, that little sound. Oh, I had heard it from Ethan, from dozens of children, from Claire once long ago, though she would never admit it now. The sound of the universe finding a doorway into a young heart. I can see craters, Olivia whispered. Yes, they look like scars. That's a good observation. The moon is beautiful even with scars. I looked at my granddaughter then, and for a moment I could not speak. Yes, I said finally. It is. She pulled back. Did that boy see this too? What boy? The one Mom doesn't like you talking about. My hand tightened on the adjustment knob. Ethan? Was he real? The question was quiet, not accusing, curious, but it struck me harder than I expected. Of course he was real. Olivia sat on the grass. Mom says you act like he became an astronaut or something. I never said he became one. I said he wanted to. Did he? When he was 10. Did people laugh? Yes. Did you? No. She nodded, serious now. Tell me. So I did. Not everything. Not about the money. Not about the letter I still half believed had existed. Not about the way Ethan's name had become a wall between Claire and me. I told Olivia about a boy with taped sneakers who came to the library because the astronomy shelf made him feel less alone. I told her about the science fair rocket, the rainy night, the notebook, the words I had once said without realizing a child might carry them longer than I carried them myself. The sky was never a ceiling, Olivia repeated softly. I smiled. That was what I told him. That's beautiful. It was just a sentence. Sentences can be beautiful. Behind us. The back door opened. Claire stood on the porch. Olivia inside. Olivia looked over her shoulder. It hasn't been 20 minutes. It has. No, it hasn't. Inside. The sharpness in Claire's voice startled even the crickets into silence. Olivia stood slowly. We were just talking. I heard. I rose from my chair. Claire. No. She stepped down from the porch. Don't do this. Do what? That story. Ethan, the poor little boy, the wise old librarian, the magical telescope. I am so tired of hearing it. Olivia's eyes widened. Daniel appeared in the doorway, concerned. Claire, he said gently. But Claire had years behind her now. Years of swallowed anger, old jealousy, and memories she had polished until they became weapons. No, Daniel. She asked if he was real because even she can tell how ridiculous it sounds. Olivia looked at me. Grandpa. I tried to keep my voice calm. Ethan was real. No, Daniel. She asked if he was real because even she can tell how ridiculous it sounds. Olivia looked at me. Grandpa. I tried to keep my voice calm. Ethan was real. Then where is he? Claire demanded. I don't know. Of course you don't. There's never proof. Just your stories. I had a letter once. The moment I said it, something flickered across her face. It was so quick I might have missed it if I had not been looking directly at her. Fear. Then it vanished. A letter, she said flatly. Yes, I saw an envelope with my name on it after he left. I believe it was from him. You believe? I searched for it. How convenient that it disappeared. The words were cruel, but her voice shook. I looked at her more closely. Claire, I said slowly, do you know something about that letter? Her face drained of color. Daniel looked from her to me. What letter? Claire folded her arms, but it was defensive now, not strong. I don't know what he's talking about, but she did. I knew it suddenly with a certainty that made my chest tighten. All those years of wondering whether I had misplaced it, imagined it failed somehow to protect one last message from a child I loved. And my daughter had just answered a question I had not yet dared to ask. Olivia whispered, Mom. Claire turned on her. Go inside. But now, Olivia ran toward the house, tears in her eyes. Daniel followed her, but not before giving Claire a look I had never seen from him before. Disappointment, quiet and deep. Then it was just the two of us on the lawn, standing beside the old telescope. The moon hung above us, scarred and bright. I said, Did you take it? Claire's mouth opened. No words came. That was answer enough. But instead of confessing, she lifted her chin and said, Maybe if you had cared that much about your own daughter, you wouldn't have needed letters from someone else's child. Then she walked inside. I stood in the grass long after the door closed. For the first time, I was not just grieving Ethan's disappearance. I was grieving the possibility that Claire had known exactly where his goodbye went, and that she had let me suffer without it. The drive home the next morning was painfully quiet. Claire, Daniel, and Olivia left just after breakfast. Daniel loaded the SUV while Olivia hugged me longer than usual. She whispered, I'm sorry about last night. I kissed the top of her head. You have nothing to apologize for. She hesitated. Grandpa? Yes. I believe you. 3 simple words. I watched tears gather in her eyes before she climbed into the back seat. Claire never looked directly at me. She rolled down the driver's window just enough to say, "We'll call when we get home." Then they were gone. I stood in the driveway until the sound of the engine disappeared beyond the maple trees. For the first time in many years, I wasn't thinking about Ethan. I was thinking about Claire, about the look on her face when I mentioned the missing letter. It had not been surprise. It had been guilt. That realization sat inside me for days like a stone I couldn't swallow. Part of me wanted to call her immediately. Part of me wanted to demand the truth. But another part, the father in me, kept asking a different question. What kind of pain had driven my daughter to hide the only goodbye a lonely little boy had ever written? People often imagine betrayal arriving like a lightning strike. It rarely does. Usually it grows slowly watered by misunderstandings that nobody has the courage to clear away. I had spent years believing Claire resented Ethan. Maybe she had. But perhaps she had been fighting something much deeper. Perhaps she believed every kind word I gave another child was one less reserved for her. That thought hurt almost more than the possibility that she had taken the letter. A week passed. Then another. Life settled back into its familiar rhythm. I woke before sunrise, made coffee, read a chapter from whatever history book sat on my nightstand, walked through the garden Helen once loved. Sometimes neighborhood children waved when they rode their bicycles past my house. Some still remembered Star Night from years before. One afternoon, I was trimming the rose bushes when someone called my name. "Mr. Beaumont?" I turned. Mrs. Evelyn Carter stood at the gate. She had volunteered at the library years earlier before arthritis made it difficult. "Evelyn?" I smiled. "It's been too long." She handed me a basket of tomatoes from her garden. "I figured you shouldn't be eating canned soup every day." "I feel attacked," she laughed. "You look lonely." "I suppose I am." She glanced toward the dining room window. "The telescope's still there. It hasn't moved." I remember when children lined up halfway across the lawn. "So do I." She leaned on the gate. "You ever think about starting Star Night again?" I sighed. "I'm not sure anyone would come." "Oh, Roger." She shook her head. "You still don't understand, do you? Understand what?" "It was never about the telescope." I frowned. "It was about how those children felt when you looked at them." After she left, I sat on the porch for a long time, thinking about that sentence. Maybe she was right. The telescope had always been an excuse. Children had not returned month after month because Saturn was beautiful. They returned because someone believed they were worth waiting for. Late that evening, I unlocked the old storage shed behind the house. Dust floated through the flashlight beam. There were folding chairs stacked against one wall. Plastic tubs labeled Star Night. Old blankets, coffee dispensers, a faded cardboard sign Olivia herself had colored when she was 6. "Welcome, stargazers." I smiled. Then I found another box. Inside were dozens of drawings children had made over the years. Planets, comets, rocket ships, stick figures standing beneath stars. Most were unsigned. Some had first names scribbled in crayon. I sat cross-legged on the floor, sorting through them one by one. Near the bottom was a folded piece of notebook paper. Not Ethan's handwriting. A different child. It read, "Dear Mr. Beaumont, my mom says we're moving because she can't pay rent anymore. I don't know where we're going. Thank you for showing me Saturn." I didn't know beautiful things were real. Love. Jason. I closed my eyes. How many letters had I forgotten? How many children had quietly carried pieces of those evenings into adulthood? I realized something then. I had spent 20 years believing Ethan was the one life I had changed. Maybe there had been dozens, maybe hundreds, not because I was extraordinary. Because children remember who makes them feel seen. The next Saturday, I cleaned the telescope. Really cleaned it. I polished the metal tube until I could almost see my reflection. I replaced 2 worn screws, oiled the tripod hinges, even ordered a replacement eyepiece online with money I'd been saving for no particular reason. While I worked, memories kept returning. Ethan laughing after finally spotting Jupiter. Claire at 10 years old asking whether stars ever got lonely. Helen wrapping cups of hot chocolate in towels so little hands wouldn't burn. For a few hours the years folded together. Then my phone rang. Claire. I answered immediately. Hi. Silence. Then, how are you? The question surprised me. I'm all right. Another pause. I've been thinking. So have I. I shouldn't have argued in front of Olivia. No. I'm sorry for that. It wasn't the apology I wanted, but it was the first one she'd offered in years. I appreciate that. More silence. I could hear traffic behind her. She was probably calling from her car. Finally, she said quietly, Do you really believe there was a letter? I closed my eyes. I know there was. You never actually read it. No. So how can you know? Because Ethan would never have left without saying goodbye. She breathed in sharply, just enough for me to hear. Then she changed the subject. Olivia keeps talking about astronomy. I smiled despite everything. She's curious. She asked me to buy her a telescope. That's wonderful. Claire didn't answer. Instead, she whispered something so softly I almost missed it. I wish things had been different. Before I could ask what she meant, she ended the call. I stood in my kitchen, staring at the phone. It wasn't much, but it wasn't nothing either. 2 days later, Daniel called. He had never phoned me without Claire before. Roger? Everything okay? I think so. His voice sounded uncertain. I probably shouldn't be calling. You already are. He laughed awkwardly. Claire hasn't been sleeping. What do you mean? She wakes up crying sometimes. I felt my chest tighten. Has something happened? I don't know. He hesitated. Every time Olivia asks about you, or about Ethan, Claire gets anxious. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then Daniel said, I've been married to your daughter for 13 years. I know. I love her. I know that too. But there's something she's carried for a very long time. I gripped the phone tighter. I don't think it started with Ethan. No. I think Ethan just became the face of something much older. What? Daniel sighed. I think Claire has spent 20 years trying to prove to herself that she mattered as much as every child you ever helped. Those words stayed with me long after we hung up. Not because they excused what Claire had done. They didn't. But because they finally gave shape to something I had never fully understood. She hadn't been competing with Ethan. She'd been competing with every lonely child who ever smiled because her father noticed them. And in her heart, she'd convinced herself she always came second. The following Friday, I loaded the telescope into my truck. I wasn't sure why. Maybe because Evelyn had been right. Maybe because Olivia believed in me. Maybe because I had spent too many years mourning what had ended instead of tending what still remained. I drove to the old library lawn just before sunset. The grass had changed. There was a new playground across the street. The oak tree had grown wider. But the sky? The sky looked exactly the same. I unfolded the tripod, adjusted the telescope, and waited. I didn't advertise. I didn't call anyone. I simply waited beneath the first evening stars, wondering whether anyone still remembered an old librarian who believed darkness existed so people could find the light. I had no idea that before the night was over, someone would recognize me, and that recognition would become the first step toward uncovering a truth that had been hidden for more than 20 years. At first, no one came. I stood beside the telescope on the old library lawn as the evening settled over Marlow, trying not to feel foolish. Cars passed slowly on Main Street. A couple walked their dog across from the courthouse. The lights inside the library glowed warm through the windows, but everything about the building had changed. New automatic doors, new posters, new computers lined up where the card catalogs once stood. Even the sign out front looked sleeker, less stubborn than the old wooden one I had known. I was the only old thing left on the lawn. For nearly 20 minutes, I adjusted the telescope and pretended to be busy. A man my age learns many ways to hide embarrassment: checking screws, cleaning a lens, rearranging folding chairs no one is sitting in. Then a little boy stopped near the sidewalk. He was maybe 7, holding his mother's hand. He pointed at the telescope. "Mom, what's that?" The woman looked over, cautious but curious. I smiled. "It's for looking at the moon," I said, "free of charge." The boy tugged her hand. "Can I?" The woman hesitated only a second before walking toward me. "What's your name?" I asked. "Caleb." "Well, Caleb, would you like to see something older than every building in this town?" His eyes widened. That was how it began again. One child became 3, 3 became 6. A few parents stopped some because they remembered me, others because children have a way of pulling adults toward wonder against their will. By the time the sky had darkened fully, 10 people stood around the old telescope, taking turns peering through the eyepiece. A girl with pink glasses asked if the moon knew we were looking at it. A teenage boy pretended not to be impressed, then quietly asked whether Saturn would be visible next month. For the first time in years, I felt the old rhythm return. Not youth. Something better. Purpose. Near the end of the evening, while I was helping Caleb adjust his eye position, a woman's voice said, "I knew it was you." I turned. A woman in her early 30s stood a few feet away holding a toddler on her hip. She had dark hair pulled into a messy bun and a face I almost recognized, but could not place. She smiled. "You don't remember me? I'm afraid my memory has more shelves than labels these days." She laughed. "Jason's sister, Emily Parker." Jason. The name stirred something from the box in my shed. The boy who wrote me about Saturn. Her smile faded into something softer. "You kept that letter. I found it recently." She shifted the toddler to her other hip. "Jason never forgot you. Is he well?" Her eyes glistened. "He passed away 4 years ago. Car accident." My heart sank. "I'm so sorry. He had a hard life," she said. "But he used to talk about Star Night whenever things got bad. He said the first time he looked through your telescope, he realized the world had beautiful things in it, even if his house didn't." I had no answer. Some gratitude is too heavy to hold. Emily touched her child's back gently. "I just wanted you to know that." She left soon after, but her words stayed with me. When the crowd thinned, I sat alone on a folding chair, staring at the moon. Jason had died. Ethan was still lost. Claire was still wounded. And yet somehow the good had not vanished. It had moved quietly from person to person, like light traveling long after a star is gone. That night, when I returned home, there was a voicemail from Olivia. Grandpa Mom says I shouldn't bother you late, but I found something. I mean, maybe it's nothing. Can you call me tomorrow? I called immediately. She answered in a whisper. Grandpa, are you all right? Yes. I'm in my room. What did you find? There was a pause. I searched Ethan Brooks. My hand tightened around the phone. Olivia. I know Mom doesn't like it, but I wanted to see. I sat down slowly at the kitchen table. There are many Ethan Brooks in the world. I know, but I found one who works in aerospace. My breath caught. What? He's an engineer. Or he was. There's an article from a university in Indiana. It says he grew up with his grandmother after losing his dad. And he talks about wanting to be an astronaut since he was a kid. The room seemed to tilt. Indiana, I whispered. That was one of the places people had mentioned after Grace disappeared. Olivia continued quickly, excitement and fear tangled in her voice. The article says he studied mechanical engineering, then aerospace. He worked on propulsion systems. Grandpa, he looks... I don't know. I found a picture. He has your kind of serious face. Despite everything, I almost laughed. Olivia, that may not mean I know. But there's more. My heart began to pound. What more? In the article they asked who inspired him. He said... She stopped. Read it, I said. Her voice shook as she read from the screen. He said, when I was a boy, there was a librarian in Ohio who let me look through an old telescope and told me the sky was never a ceiling. I didn't understand until years later that he had given me a way to survive. The phone slipped slightly in my hand. For a long moment, I could not speak. The kitchen blurred. The old yellow tiles, Helen's window, the chair where Claire had once sat with tuition papers. Everything became distant except that sentence. The sky was never a ceiling. Olivia whispered, Grandpa. I covered my mouth. I'm here. It's him, isn't it? I closed my eyes. Yes, I said, though it came out broken. It's him? Olivia started crying softly. I knew you weren't lying. Those words undid me, not because I had needed a 12-year-old child to validate my memories, but because after so many years of being doubted, some part of me had started doubting myself. We stayed on the phone until nearly midnight. Olivia sent me the article by email. I opened it on my old laptop with trembling hands. There he was, not the boy with taped sneakers. A man, broad-shouldered, clean-cut, wearing a dark suit in one photo and a flight jacket in another. The same serious eyes, though. The same intensity, as if he were still studying the world for signs it might betray him or surprise him. Ethan Brooks, aerospace engineer, former test pilot candidate, NASA mission specialist applicant. I read the article once, then again, then a third time. It did not say he was an astronaut yet, but it said he had been shortlisted for a NASA program, that he had worked on deep space propulsion research, that he had spoken to students about poverty perseverance and the importance of adults who refused to laugh at children's dreams. A librarian in Ohio. No name. Just that. I leaned back in my chair and wept in a way I had not wept since Helen died. Not loudly, not dramatically, just years of unanswered questions leaving my body all at once. The next morning, Claire called before I had finished coffee. Her voice was tight. Did Olivia call you last night? Yes. I told her not to get involved. She found Ethan. Silence. Then Claire said, she found someone named Ethan. No, she found him. You don't know that. He quoted me. Voice was tight. Did Olivia call you last night? Yes. I told her not to get involved. She found Ethan. Silence. Then Claire said, she found someone named Ethan. No, she found him. You don't know that. He quoted me. People say all kinds of things in interviews. Claire. No, Dad. Do not do this again. Her voice rose, but underneath it, I heard panic. Do not turn some internet article into proof that your fairy tale came true. It isn't a fair why tale. You don't know that I do. Her voice rose, but underneath it, I heard panic. Do not turn some internet article into proof that your fairy tale came true. It isn't a fairy tale. You don't know that I do. How? Because he said a line. Because he mentioned Ohio. Because I remember him. She laughed bitterly. You remember everything the way you want to. The words struck old bruises. But this time, I did not retreat. No, I said. I remember a child who mattered. And I didn't. There it was, the wound beneath all wounds. I closed my eyes. You mattered more than anyone. Then why did it never feel that way? The question hung between us. I could have defended myself. I could have said because grief made us both clumsy, because poverty made every choice look like betrayal, because you mistook my compassion for absence, because I mistook your ambition for rejection. But what came out was simpler. I don't know, I said, but I am sorry. She said nothing. Then quietly, almost fiercely, she said, Don't tell Olivia this is real until you have proof. She already believes it. She's a child. So was Ethan. Claire hung up. For the next several days, Olivia kept searching. She found more articles. Ethan Brooks had graduated from Purdue. He had earned a scholarship after winning a national science competition in high school. He had given a commencement speech where he mentioned his grandmother. Grace had lived long enough to see him graduate college, then passed away before his first aerospace job. I read that part with tears in my eyes. Grace had seen him rise. Thank God. Then came the discovery that changed everything. NASA announced its newest astronaut candidate class. The article appeared on a Tuesday morning. Olivia sent it with no message, just a string of capital letters and crying emojis. I opened it. There among smiling faces in blue flight suits was Ethan Brooks. Selected, not a candidate anymore in the vague sense. An astronaut, my Ethan, the boy from the library lawn, the boy with the broken rocket, the boy my daughter had spent years calling a story. I stared at his official photograph until the screen dimmed. Then I clicked on his biography. It listed degrees, flight hours, research projects, honors. But near the bottom, under personal statement, one sentence stopped my heart. My journey began in a small library in Ohio, where a man named Roger Beaumont showed me Saturn through a scratched telescope and taught me that the sky was never a ceiling. This time, there was no room left for doubt, no missing letter, no vanished boy, no story softened by age. There it was printed in black and white for the world to see. My name, his dream, and the truth my daughter had refused to believe. I printed Ethan's NASA biography because I needed to hold the proof in my hands. That may sound old-fashioned, but a glowing screen felt too fragile. A web page could disappear. A browser could close. A battery could die. But paper had weight. Ink had permanence. I printed 3 copies at the little desk in my hallway, listening to the machine groan, as if it too understood the importance of what it was giving me. When the final page slid out, I picked it up carefully. There was my name, Roger Beaumont. Not Mr. Beaumont, not an unnamed librarian. My full name written in a NASA biography under the photograph of a man who had once been a soaked 10-year-old boy holding a ruined cardboard rocket. I sat down on the hallway floor. Not because I meant to, because my knees simply forgot their purpose. For more than 20 years, Ethan had lived in my memory like a candle behind fog. I believed in him, yes, but belief can become painful when the world offers no evidence. There had been times, especially after Claire mocked the story, when I wondered whether I had made too much of it. Maybe I had turned a few kind afternoons into something bigger because loneliness needed meaning. Maybe I had exaggerated his dream because I wanted to believe my work mattered. But there it was. He remembered. He remembered the scratched telescope. He remembered Saturn. He remembered the sentence, "The sky was never a ceiling." I pressed the paper against my chest and cried like a man receiving a letter from the dead. Except Ethan was not dead. He was alive. He had risen, and somehow he had carried me with him. I called Olivia first. She answered before the second ring. "Grandpa, I printed it. I knew you would. I don't know what to do next. You should write to him." The suggestion terrified me. "To NASA?" "Yes. Olivia, he's an astronaut now. He must get thousands of messages. So I'm just an old man from Ohio." "No," she said firmly. "You're Roger Beaumont." I smiled through tears. "You make that sound important. It is important. He put your name in his biography. I don't want to bother him." "You won't? Grandpa, what if he's been hoping you would see it?" That thought unsettled me more than comforted me. What if Ethan had named me because he wanted me to know? What if after all these years he had been sending a message across distance the only way he could, a biography, an interview, a sentence tucked into public record like a letter hidden between astronomy books? Olivia stayed on the phone while I searched NASA's website for a contact page. I found a general media email, a public outreach office, and a form for messages to astronaut candidates. My hands trembled so badly I mistyped my own email twice. "What should I write?" I asked. "Tell the truth. The whole truth. Maybe not about Mom yet." I looked toward the framed photograph of Claire on my mantel. Her wedding day smile, controlled, beautiful, distant. "No," I said softly. "Not yet." So I wrote a short message. "Dear NASA Public Affairs Team, my name is Roger Beaumont. I recently read the biography of astronaut Ethan Brooks and saw that he mentioned me. I was the librarian in Ohio who hosted Star Night many years ago. Ethan was a boy who came often to our library, and I have wondered for decades what became of him. Please tell him, if possible, that I am proud beyond words and grateful to know he is well. Respectfully, Roger Beaumont." I read it aloud to Olivia. "It's too formal," she said. "I don't want to sound strange. You sound like you're writing to the IRS." I laughed for the first time that day. "What would you say?" She cleared her throat dramatically. "Dear Ethan, I always knew you could reach the stars. Love, Grandpa Roger. You sound like you're writing to the IRS." I laughed for the first time that day. "What would you say?" She cleared her throat dramatically. "Dear Ethan, I always knew you could reach the stars. Love, Grandpa Roger. Absolutely not." "Fine, but add something warmer." So I added one more line. "The old telescope still works." After I sent it, I stared at the screen. Nothing happened. Of course, nothing happened. Emails do not open doors immediately. They simply vanish into the invisible world and leave you alone with hope, which is sometimes harder than despair. For the next week, I checked my inbox more often than I care to admit. Morning, noon, before bed. Once at 3 a.m, when I woke from a dream that Helen was standing in the kitchen saying, "Roger, answer the phone." No reply came. Claire called twice during that week, but not about Ethan. She asked whether I had taken my blood pressure medication. She reminded me that the weather was turning hot, and I should not mow the lawn in the afternoon. She told me Olivia had a science project due, and blamed me lightly, but not entirely joking, for her sudden interest in space. Each time, Ethan's name hovered between us, unspoken. Finally, on the 8th day, I said, "Claire, did you see his biography?" Silence. Then, yes. And what I sat at the kitchen table, one printed copy in front of me, the edges already soft from being handled too often. "It has my name." I saw. "You still think it's a coincidence?" She exhaled sharply. "No, Dad. I don't think it's a coincidence." I waited. She said nothing else. "Claire, what do you want from me?" The question came out tired, not angry. "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe I wanted you to say you believe me. I believe that he exists. That isn't the same. It's all I can say right now." "Why?" Her voice broke slightly. "Because if I say more, then I have to look at everything else." There it was again, the locked door. I softened. "Claire, we need to talk about the letter." "No, one day we do. Not today." "Then when I don't know?" Her shout cracked through the phone. Then quieter, she said, "I don't know." I heard her crying. My daughter, who had taught herself to sound polished, even when wounded, was crying where I could hear. So, I did not push. "All right," I said. She hung up without goodbye. That evening, Olivia texted me. "Mom cried in the bathroom. I think she knows." I did not answer right away. What could I say? Children often see more truth than adults admit, but they should not have to carry it. I typed, "Be gentle with her. But remember, her pain does not make your belief wrong." Olivia replied with a heart. 2 more weeks passed. No email. The excitement that had lifted me began to settle into something more fragile. I reminded myself that NASA was a huge organization. Messages could be lost. Ethan might be in training. He might never hear my name beyond his own biography. Perhaps the message would sit forever in some inbox beside school invitations and autograph requests. Still, every morning I checked. Then one Thursday afternoon, a letter arrived. Not an email, a real letter. The envelope was thick white and official-looking, with NASA's blue insignia in the corner. For several seconds, I simply stood at the mailbox holding it. My neighbor, Mr. Alvarez, called from across the street. "Everything okay, Roger?" I waved without looking up. "Yes, I think so." I carried the envelope inside and placed it on the kitchen table. Then I made coffee. Not because I wanted coffee, but because I was afraid to open the letter. I washed the cup while the coffee brewed, wiped the counter, straightened the chair, checked the lock on the back door. Finally, there was nothing left to delay. I sat down and opened it carefully with Helen's old letter opener. Inside was a typed letter. "Dear Mr. Beaumont, on behalf of NASA's Astronaut Office and Public Engagement Team, we are pleased to inform you that astronaut Ethan Brooks received your message. He was deeply moved to learn that you had seen his biography. Astronaut Brooks has requested that we extend a personal invitation for you to attend an upcoming pre-mission recognition ceremony at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, where he will be honored with his crew before advanced training. Travel accommodations can be discussed with our office." At the bottom, handwritten in blue ink, were 7 words. "Please come. I have waited years. Ethan." I could not breathe. Not properly. I held the letter in both hands as if it might lift away. "Please come. I have waited years." The room blurred. The walls, the table, the curtains. Claire hated the old floorboards beneath my shoes. All of it seemed suddenly too small to contain what I was feeling. I called Olivia. She screamed so loudly I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Then I called Claire. She answered from work. Her voice clipped. "Dad, can I call you back? I got a letter." "What letter?" "From NASA." Silence. Claire. "What did it say?" "They invited me to Houston. Ethan asked me to come." Another silence. This one was different. Heavy. Afraid. Then she said, a different. Heavy. Afraid. Then she said, "Are you sure it's real?" I looked down at the official letterhead, the contact number, the handwritten message that felt more real than most things I had touched in years. "Yes. There are scams, Dad. You sure it's real?" I looked down at the official letterhead, the contact number, the handwritten message that felt more real than most things I had touched in years. "Yes. There are scams, Dad. It's real." "How do you know?" "Because some truths finally arrive with their own seal." She did not laugh. "I want to see it," she said. "You can." "No. I want to go with you." I was so surprised I stood up. "You do?" "Yes." "Why?" Her answer came slowly. "Because if this is real, then I need to see it happen." I closed my eyes. Part of me hoped she wanted to support me, but another part heard the old suspicion hiding beneath her words. She was not coming to celebrate the truth. She was coming to inspect it, maybe even to protect herself from it. Still, I said, "All right." After we hung up, I looked again at Ethan's handwritten words. "Please come. I have waited years, and for the first time since that rainy night when he vanished into the storm, I allowed myself to believe I might finally hear the goodbye my daughter had stolen from me." The days before the trip to Houston passed like a storm that had not yet broken. I had never been to Texas. At least, not properly. Years earlier, Helen and I had driven through the corner of it on a road trip we could barely afford, back when Claire was small enough to sleep across the back seat with a stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. But Houston, NASA, Johnson Space Center, all of that belonged to a different world. A world of glass buildings, flight suits, mission patches, and people who spoke in acronyms I did not understand. A world Ethan had somehow reached, a world I had only shown him through old books and a scratched telescope. The NASA Public Engagement Office called 2 days after the letter arrived. A woman named Marissa spoke with the kind of calm professionalism that made me feel both honored and underdressed, even though I was standing in my kitchen wearing socks. "Mr. Beaumont," she said, "Astronaut Brooks was very clear that he hoped you could attend." Astronaut Brooks. I still could not hear those words without seeing a wet boy holding a cardboard rocket. "I'm not sure I belong at such an event," I admitted. There was a small pause. Then Marissa said, "Sir, with respect, he seems to believe you do." That sentence stayed with me. They arranged airfare, a hotel, a shuttle from the airport. I tried to argue that it was too much, that I could pay my own way if I needed to, although truthfully, I could not. Marissa simply said the invitation included accommodations and that Ethan had personally requested it. Personally requested it. I wrote those words down on a notepad, then felt foolish and tore the page off. Claire came to my house the Saturday before the trip. She arrived alone. No Daniel, no Olivia. That alone told me the visit was serious. She stepped into the hallway and looked around as if the house had become a place she could no longer fully trust. Her eyes moved to the printed NASA biography on the side table. I had not left it there to accuse her, but she looked accused anyway. "Coffee?" I asked. "No, thank you." She sat at the kitchen table, the same table where she had once spread out tuition papers and asked me to sell the house. The same table where she had found Grace Brooks's name on a bank statement. The same table where so many of our wounds had first learned to speak. I sat across from her. For a while, Neither of us said anything. Finally, she asked, "Do you really want me to go?" The honest answer was complicated. I wanted her there. I feared her there. I wanted my daughter to see the truth. I feared the truth might break whatever fragile peace remained between us. "Yes," I said. She looked down at her hands. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do there. Just be present. What if it's awkward? It will be." That almost made her smile. Then her eyes lifted to mine. "Dad, I need to ask you something." "All right, if Ethan recognizes you, if he talks about you in front of people." She stopped. "If he does," I said gently. "What?" Her mouth tightened. "Are you going to make me look like a monster?" The question stunned me. "Claire, I know how stories work," she said quickly. "I work in marketing. I know how people choose heroes and villains. The poor boy, the kind librarian, the selfish daughter who didn't believe." I leaned back slowly. "Is that what you think this is? Isn't it?" "No." She gave a bitter little laugh. "Dad, I hid something from you." The room went still. She swallowed hard. "I'm not ready to talk about it, but we both know I did." Hearing her say that much should have satisfied me. It did not. It opened the wound wider. Why, I asked. She closed her eyes. I said, "I'm not ready, and I have waited over 20 years. "I know." "No," I said, my voice rougher than I intended. "I don't think you do." Her eyes snapped open. For once, I did not soften the truth. "I spent years wondering if that boy thought I had abandoned him. I wondered if he wrote goodbye, if he needed help, if there was something in that letter that might have helped me find him. I searched drawers and trash bins and book carts. I questioned my own memory. And all that time, my voice failed. Claire's face crumpled. All that time I continued, you knew. A tear slid down her cheek. Yes. The word was small, but it filled the kitchen. I looked away, because if I watched her cry, the father in me would run to comfort her, and another part of me needed space to be hurt. She whispered, "I was so angry." "I know." "No, you don't." Her voice broke open then. "You don't know what it felt like to be your daughter and feel invisible beside every broken child you rescued." I stared at the table. "I never meant to make you feel invisible." "But you did." The accusation was quiet, and because it was quiet, it hurt more. "When Mom died," Claire said, "everyone told me to be strong. You were grieving, so I tried not to need too much. But then I watched you give all this tenderness to other children. You had patience for them. You had words for them. Beautiful words. And with me, you were tired. Careful. Sad." I opened my mouth, but she shook her head. "I know you loved me. I know that now. But back then, it felt like you were saving everyone except me. I did not know what to say, because some of it was true. Not all of it, not in the way she had believed, but grief had made me quiet. Work had made me exhausted. Money had made me ashamed. And maybe I had offered other children the kind of hope I did not know how to offer my own daughter, because with them, I was not terrified of failing as a father." Claire wiped her face with both hands. "When I saw that letter, I hated him. Ethan, I hated what he represented." She looked ashamed. "He got your best words, your belief, your attention, and then he got to leave." I was still there, stuck with the bills, the old house, the ghost of Mom, and a father everyone else thought was wonderful. I took that in slowly. It wasn't Ethan's fault. I know. It wasn't mine entirely either. She nodded, crying harder now. "I know that too. The apology hovered close, but still did not land. Maybe she was not ready. Maybe I was not either. Finally, she said, I want to go to Houston because I need to see him. I need to see what that letter meant. I need to understand what I took from you. Her voice cracked. And from him. Maybe I was not either. Finally, she said, I want to go to Houston because I need to see him. I need to see what that letter meant. I need to understand what I took from you. Her voice cracked. And from him. For the first time, I saw not the angry daughter who had mocked my memory, but the woman trapped inside a mistake she had made before she understood its consequences. I won't make you a monster, I said quietly. She looked at me. But I won't pretend it didn't hurt. She nodded. That's fair. When she left, she hugged me. Not quickly this time. Not coolly. She held on like someone standing at the edge of a confession too deep to survive alone. 2 days later, we flew to Houston. Claire sat by the window. I sat beside her. Daniel and Olivia had planned to come too, but at the last minute, Claire asked them to stay home until she understood what she was walking into. Olivia was furious. She called me from her bedroom the night before we left. She's doing it again, Olivia said. She's making it about her. I understood the anger, but I also understood fear. Your mother is trying, I said. She should have tried 20 years ago. She's doing it again, Olivia said. She's making it about her. I understood the anger, but I also understood fear. Your mother is trying, I said. She should have tried 20 years ago. Yes, I said. She should have. That silenced her. Then she whispered, Will you tell me everything? Every detail. Promise. I promise. On the plane, Claire barely spoke. She looked out the window while clouds passed beneath us like mountains made of milk. Once, during turbulence, she gripped the armrest. Without thinking, I placed my hand over hers. She did not pull away. After a moment, she said, I'm scared. So am I. You... I gave a small laugh. Claire, I'm about to walk into NASA wearing a department store suit I bought on sale in 2009. She laughed then. A real laugh. Brief, but real. When we landed in Houston, heat wrapped around us the moment we stepped outside the airport. It was different from Ohio heat. Heavier, fuller. The air smelled of asphalt rain and distance. A driver held a sign with my name. Roger Beaumont. Claire stared at it. I think seeing my name in official hands made the truth harder for her to dismiss. The hotel was nicer than anywhere I had stayed in years. Too nice. Marble floors, tall windows. A lobby filled with people who looked purposeful and well-rested. In my room, a welcome packet waited on the desk. Inside was the schedule for the ceremony guest credentials and a small card with NASA's emblem. At the bottom, handwritten in the same blue ink as the letter, was another message. Mr. Beaumont, I will see you tomorrow. I have more to thank you for than I can say on stage. Ethan. I sat on the bed. Claire stood in the doorway reading over my shoulder. Her face went pale. He really remembers you, she whispered. I looked at the card. Yes. She turned toward the window, blinking fast. For once, she did not argue. The next morning, a shuttle took us to Johnson Space Center. As we passed through security, I felt like a man entering a dream that belonged to someone else. Buildings stretched across the campus. Flags moved in the warm wind. People wearing badges walked briskly past, carrying folders, coffee cups, and conversations about missions, training schedules, and launch windows. Claire walked beside me silently. Then we entered the auditorium. Rows and rows of seats, bright lights, a stage with NASA insignia, crew photographs projected on a screen, and there, larger than life, was Ethan Brooks in a blue flight suit. My breath caught. Claire saw the picture too. She whispered, "That's him." I nodded, but in my mind, I saw him differently. Not the astronaut, the boy in the rain, the child at the telescope, the one who asked if something that started low could still go high. An usher led us toward the front. "Reserved seating for Mr. Beaumont," she said. People turned slightly as we passed. I felt Claire stiffen beside me. We sat in the second row. My hands shook. Claire noticed. After a moment, she reached over and took one. The lights dimmed. The ceremony began. Speakers welcomed families, colleagues, mentors, and distinguished guests. They spoke about courage, service, science, sacrifice. Then they introduced the crew. One by one, astronauts walked onto the stage. Applause filled the room. And then Ethan Brooks stepped forward. He was taller than I expected. Older, of course. Stronger. His hair was neatly cut. His posture straight. His face calm, in the way people become calm after surviving things others never saw. But when his eyes swept the audience and found mine, the years vanished. For 1 second, I was not in Houston. I was back in a small Ohio library during a storm. Ethan stopped walking. The applause continued around him, but he stood still. His hand lifted slightly. Not a wave, a recognition. Beside me, Claire stopped breathing. Then Ethan smiled, and I knew the next part of my life was about to begin. Ethan's smile was small at first. Not the polished smile of a man standing before cameras. Not the practiced expression people wear when they know photographs are being taken. It was private, almost boyish. The kind of smile that crosses a face before the person remembers the whole world is watching. Then the applause around him grew louder, and he seemed to return to the stage. He took his place with the rest of the crew. I sat in the second row with my hands folded so tightly my knuckles ached. Claire's hand was still over mine, but neither of us looked at the other. We both stared at Ethan as if he had stepped out of memory and into flesh. The ceremony continued. A senior NASA official spoke about the mission. I understood only half of it. Something about research orbital systems, international cooperation, and the long chain of people whose work made human spaceflight possible. Then each astronaut was introduced. When Ethan's turn came, a large image of him appeared on the screen behind the stage. Ethan Brooks, Mission Specialist Aerospace Engineer, Ohio/Indiana, Ohio. That single word felt like a hand pressing on my heart. The official read from a prepared biography. Degrees, military research partnership, propulsion systems, survival training, public outreach. Then the official said, Astronaut Brooks has often spoken about the importance of mentorship in his life, particularly the encouragement he received as a child from a local librarian. A murmur moved through the audience. Claire's fingers tightened around mine. Ethan stepped to the podium. For a moment, he simply looked out at the crowd. His voice, when it came, was deeper than I expected. Steady, warm. "Thank you," he said. "To NASA leadership, to my crew, to my colleagues, to my family, and to every person who ever turned a wrench, wrote an equation, packed a lunch, taught a class, cleaned a hallway, or stayed late so someone like me could one day stand here." People applauded. He waited. I've been asked many times when my dream of space began. People expect me to say it started with a rocket launch on television, or a school field trip, or a science teacher. Those things mattered, but the truth is simpler. He paused. My dream began in a small public library in Ohio. My vision blurred. Claire stopped moving beside me. I was 10 years old, Ethan continued. I had taped sneakers, a backpack heavier than my confidence, and a reading level that made adults lower their expectations before they even finished saying my name. A soft sound moved through the room. Not pity exactly, recognition. My father was gone. My mother was gone in a different way. My grandmother was doing everything she could to keep us fed and housed. And I had made the mistake of telling people I wanted to be an astronaut. He smiled faintly. You can imagine how that went. A few people laughed softly. I was laughed at by classmates, dismissed by adults. And somewhere along the way, I decided maybe the safest thing was to stop saying the dream out loud. He looked down at the podium. Then he lifted his eyes. But there was a librarian named Roger Beaumont. My heart stopped. He said my name clearly. Not in passing, not as a footnote, as if the name deserved to be heard. Several heads turned toward me. I wanted to disappear and stand taller at the same time. Claire's hand slipped from mine. Ethan looked directly at me then. The auditorium seemed to go quiet in a way silence alone cannot explain. Mr. Beaumont, he said, I saw you the moment I walked in. A ripple moved through the crowd. I could not speak, of course. I could only sit there, an old man in a gray suit, feeling every year of waiting rise into my throat. Ethan smiled again. I wasn't sure if I would recognize you after all this time. But I did. Because some people don't live in your memory as faces. They live there as rescue. I covered my mouth. Claire bowed her head. Ethan turned back to the audience. Mr. Beaumont ran something called Star Night. It wasn't funded. It wasn't fancy. It was a scratched telescope on a library lawn, hot cocoa in paper cups, and a man patient enough to let poor kids take up space under the universe. The applause started, but Ethan lifted one hand gently. He was not finished. The first night I looked through that telescope, I saw Jupiter's moons. I remember asking if they were real. Mr. Beaumont said, as real as you are. He gave a soft laugh. That mattered to me, because at that point in my life, I wasn't always sure I felt real to the adults around me. I felt that sentence like a blade. Beside me, Claire wiped her face. He gave me books I could barely read. He helped me sound out words like trajectory. And when I asked whether something that started low could still go high, he didn't laugh. He said, that is exactly what trajectory means. A few people in the audience laughed through emotion. Ethan's voice grew quieter. There was a night when I brought him a broken cardboard rocket. Some boys at school had destroyed it. I was soaked from rain and ashamed of having wanted too much. Mr. Beaumont didn't tell me it was just a school project. He didn't tell me to toughen up. He sat with me, helped me rebuild it, and said words I wrote down that night. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. My breath caught. He unfolded a small piece of paper. Old paper. Not the letter. Something else. My original notebook is too fragile to travel often, he said, but I carry a copy of this page with me. He looked at it, then read. No one gets to decide the height of your life except you. The sky was never a ceiling. The room was completely silent. Ethan lowered the paper. I know that may sound like a beautiful line to some of you. To me, it was oxygen. My body shook once with a sob I could not stop. I went home that night and wrote it down because I was afraid I would forget it. I read it when we lost our house. I read it when my grandmother and I slept in a church basement in Indiana. I read it when I was put in remedial classes. I read it when I failed my first calculus exam. I read it when I was told astronaut candidates usually come from backgrounds much stronger than mine. He smiled through tears now. And I read it the night NASA called. Applause broke out again, louder this time. People stood. Not everyone at first. Then, row by row, the auditorium rose. I remained seated because my legs would not obey me. Claire stood beside me, crying openly now, one hand pressed to her mouth. Ethan looked directly at us through the standing ovation. He did not look triumphant. He looked grateful. And somehow, that was harder to bear. When the applause finally faded, Ethan leaned toward the microphone. I want to say this as plainly as I can. Mr. Beaumont was not wealthy. He did not give me a scholarship. He did not have political connections. He did not open a door with power. He opened one with belief. He paused. And sometimes, belief is the first door. The auditorium grew quiet again. I have been fortunate to work with brilliant people. Engineers, pilots, scientists, doctors, teachers. But before all of them, there was an old telescope in Ohio and a man who saw a frightened boy and refused to treat his dream as foolish. He turned toward me. Mr. Beaumont, you were the first person who ever made me believe the sky was not a ceiling, the exact words from the outline of my life. Only I had given them to him first. Now he was giving them back in front of the world. I stood then, slowly. The room turned toward me, but I saw only Ethan. For a moment, I was ashamed of my tears. Then I stopped being ashamed. There are tears a man earns by surviving long enough to see kindness return. Ethan placed his hand over his heart. I did the same. No one had planned that. No one needed to. The ceremony moved on eventually, though I cannot remember much of what followed. Mission patches were presented. Photographs were taken. Officials shook hands. The crew stood beneath bright lights while cameras flashed. But I sat in a blur of gratitude and disbelief. Claire did not speak. Not once. When the lights came up, people began moving around us. Some turned to shake my hand. A woman in a navy blazer said, "Mr. Beaumont, I'm a teacher. Thank you for reminding me what words can do." A man with silver hair squeezed my shoulder and said, "You must be very proud." I nodded, unable to answer. Then, a young NASA staff member approached. "Mr. Beaumont?" "Yes." "Astronaut Brooks would like to see you privately before the reception, if you're comfortable." Comfortable? I almost laughed. Nothing about my heart was comfortable. "Yes," I said. "Of course." The staff member looked toward Claire. "And your daughter is welcome to come as well." Claire froze. For a second, fear crossed her face so plainly that I knew she wanted to run. She had come to witness the truth. But now the truth wanted to look back at her. I reached for her hand. She stared at it. Then, trembling, she took it. Together, we followed the staff member down a side aisle, past the stage, through a door, marked authorized personnel only. Every step echoed. Claire whispered, "Dad." I turned. Her face was pale. "I don't know if I can do this." I squeezed her hand once. "Neither do I." Ahead of us in a quiet hallway away from the lights and applause, Ethan Brooks stood waiting. No cameras, no audience, no podium. Just the man he had become looking at the old librarian who had never stopped wondering where he went. And when he saw me, he did not salute, wave, or offer some formal handshake. He crossed the hallway like a boy running home. Ethan reached me before I could prepare myself. One moment, he was standing at the end of the hallway, in his blue flight suit, tall and composed beneath the fluorescent lights. The next, he was in front of me, arms open, pulling me into an embrace so fierce it drove the breath from my chest. "Mr. Beaumont," he whispered. "Not Roger, not Sir. Mr. Beaumont." the name he had written on that envelope all those years ago. I held him as tightly as my old arms allowed. For a moment, I did not feel the cameras, the ceremony, the NASA badges, or even Claire standing beside me. I felt only the impossible weight of a lost child returned as a grown man. "You made it," I said, my voice breaking. Ethan gave a shaky laugh against my shoulder. "You told me I could." When he finally stepped back, his eyes were wet. Mine must have been worse. He studied my face with a tenderness that nearly undid me again. "You look exactly the same," he said. "That is a generous lie." He smiled. "Maybe. But you sound the same. And you," I said, looking him over, "are taller than I remember. I had a growth spurt after we left Ohio." At the mention of leaving, something shifted. The years stood between us, suddenly asking to be acknowledged. Ethan seemed to feel it too. He turned slightly. A staff member asked softly, "Would you like the private room now?" Ethan nodded. "This way." We followed him down the hall to a quiet conference room, with a long table framed mission photographs on the walls and a window overlooking a courtyard. There were bottles of water on the table and a box of tissues placed discreetly near the center, as if NASA had hosted enough emotional reunions to know practical details mattered. Ethan waited until the door closed. Then he turned to Claire. "You must be Claire." She went still. I watched her face change. Surprise first, then dread. "You know who I am?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Mr. Beaumont talked about you." Claire looked at me startled. "He did?" Ethan smiled gently. "All the time." Claire's eyes filled immediately, as if one sentence had struck a place 20 years of arguments had never reached. Ethan continued. "He told me you were smart, determined, that you sang in choir, that your mother would have been proud of how hard you worked." Claire's mouth trembled. "I thought—" She stopped. I knew what she had thought. She had thought I gave Ethan the best parts of myself and erased her from the story. But even when she was angry with me, even when the distance between us widened, she had remained the center of my life. I simply had not known how to make her feel it. Ethan pulled out a chair. "Please sit." We sat. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Ethan reached into a leather folder lying on the table. "I brought something," he said. My heart knew before my eyes did. He opened the folder and removed a small blue spiral notebook. The cover was faded almost gray at the edges. The wire binding was bent. A strip of clear archival tape held one corner together. Across the front, in uneven handwriting, were the words, "Rocket Notes." I covered my mouth. "That notebook," I whispered. Ethan laid it carefully on the table between us. I kept it. Claire stared at it like it was a holy object. Ethan turned the pages slowly. There were sketches of rockets, lists of planets, misspelled words corrected later in darker ink, diagrams of fins and engines, pages filled with phrases I had said and forgotten. Hard books don't mind waiting. You can't mess up wonder. Something that starts low can still go high. Poverty does not own your future. The sky was never a ceiling. I touched one page with one finger. "I had no idea you wrote these down. I was afraid I'd lose them if I didn't." He smiled sadly. "We were losing a lot back then." I looked at him. "Ethan, I tried to find you." "I know." The answer startled me. "You know?" He nodded. "My grandmother told me. Years later. She said you called the school, came by the house, asked people." My throat tightened. "I thought you might believe I had forgotten you." His eyes filled again. "Never." That word gave back something I did not know I was still missing. Ethan leaned back and took a breath. When we left Ohio, everything happened fast. The landlord had already changed the locks once. Grandma was sick. She had a cousin in Indiana who said we could stay for a while, but we had to leave before sunrise because she was afraid if I went to school that day, she wouldn't have the courage to pull me out. I wish she had told me. She was ashamed. I would have helped. She knew. He looked down at the notebook. She said that was why leaving hurt so much. Claire sat very still. I could feel the guilt radiating from her, but Ethan was not looking at her with accusation. He was telling the truth as gently as truth can be told. I wrote you a letter, he said. The room changed. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. I could not look at her. I saw it, I said quietly. Or I thought I did. Ethan nodded. I left it between the astronomy books because I didn't know if I was allowed behind the desk. I thought you'd find it. My eyes burned. I almost did. I figured maybe it got lost. His voice was kind. Too kind. Claire made a small sound. Ethan turned to her, and somehow in that moment, he understood. Maybe not the details, but enough. Claire whispered, I found it. The words barely came out. I closed my eyes. There it was. At last, the truth spoken aloud. Ethan did not move. Claire's tears spilled over. I found it on the return cart. I was angry. I was young and angry, and I thought... She pressed both hands against her chest as if trying to hold herself together. I thought if my father read it, you would become even more important to him. I thought that letter would prove he had chosen you. Ethan listened silently. Claire turned to me. I put it in my purse. I meant to throw it away. Then I couldn't. So I hid it. My voice came out rough. Where? In a box. In my old closet? I stared at her. All of these years. She nodded, crying hard now. I kept moving it. From your house to my apartment. From my apartment to the house with Daniel. I don't know why. I think part of me wanted to confess, and part of me hated that I still had proof of what I'd done. Ethan's eyes lowered. I could not speak. The pain was too large and too old. Claire reached into her handbag with trembling hands. I brought it. My head snapped up. She pulled out a plastic sleeve. Inside was an envelope yellowed with age. Mr. Beaumont. Ethan's handwriting. A sound left me that I did not recognize. Claire placed it on the table and pushed it toward me. I'm sorry, she whispered. I am so sorry, Dad. For 20 years, I had imagined that letter. I had given it 1,000 possible contents. A goodbye, a thank you, a plea for help, an address, a final message from a boy who had vanished into rain. Now it sat in front of me, small and fragile, carrying the weight of everything lost between us. My hands shook too badly to open it. Ethan reached across the table. You don't have to read it now. Yes, I said. Because I did. I slid the letter from the envelope. The paper was lined notebook paper, folded twice. The pencil writing had faded, but remained legible. Dear Mr. Beaumont, Grandma says we have to leave. I don't know where yet. I wanted to tell you goodbye, but she said we had to go fast. Thank you for the books and the telescope and for fixing my rocket. I am taking my notebook. I wrote down what you said so I won't forget. I don't know if I can really be an astronaut, but when I look at the sky now, I feel like maybe it is looking back. If I ever get there, I will tell them about you. Your friend, Ethan Brooks. By the time I finished, I was crying so hard the words blurred. Your friend. If I ever get there, I will tell them about you. He had done exactly that. He had kept a promise written by a child with no stable home, no money, no certainty, and a dream everyone else had mocked. Ethan was crying too. Claire sobbed into both hands. For a long moment, none of us spoke. Then Ethan said quietly, "I always wondered if you read it." "I'm sorry," Claire whispered to him. "I took that from both of you." Ethan looked at her for a long time. Then he said something I will never forget. "You were a hurt daughter. That doesn't make it right, but it helps me understand." Claire shook her head. "I don't deserve understanding." "Maybe not," Ethan said gently. "But healing rarely starts with what we deserve." I looked at him, then this man I had once tried to encourage, and realized he had become far wiser than the old librarian who helped him. Claire turned to me. "Dad, I was wrong. You didn't lie. You didn't imagine him. You didn't choose him instead of me." She swallowed. "But I let you believe you had lost something because I was afraid I had already lost you." The room held its breath. I wanted to forgive her immediately. I also wanted to be angry. Both were true, so I told the truth. "I love you, Claire," I said. "I have loved you every day of your life." She nodded through tears. "But what you did hurt me." "I know, and love does not erase hurt just because we want peace." Her face crumpled, but she accepted it. "I know." Ethan quietly closed the notebook. Then he pushed it toward me. "I want you to have this for tonight." "No," I said. "That belongs to you. It belongs to both of us." I touched the faded blue cover, the old notebook, the lost letter. My daughter's confession. The boy who reached the stars. Everything I had believed and doubted sat on that table together. And for the first time in decades, the truth was no longer hiding. We stayed in that conference room long after the letter was read. Nobody rushed us. Maybe the staff outside understood that some moments are larger than schedules. Or maybe Ethan had asked for privacy. Either way, for the first time since we arrived in Houston, there were no speeches, no applause, no bright lights, no official words polished for an audience. Just 3 people sitting around a table with a notebook, an old letter, and the wreckage of choices made in pain. Claire kept staring at the envelope. "I don't know how to fix this," she whispered. I looked at her, but I did not answer right away. For most of my life, I had believed that love meant softening every blow. A father learns to protect his child from sharp corners, hot pans, hard falls, and cruel words. Even when the child grows older, that instinct remains. When Claire cried, something in me still wanted to gather her up and say, "It's all right, sweetheart." But it was not all right, and pretending it was would only bury the truth again. "You can't fix 20 years in one day," I said. She nodded as if she had expected that, but the words still hurt. "I know." Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying both of us. He had the calm of a man trained to handle pressure, but his eyes were full of emotion. "I used to imagine this," he said. I turned to him. "What, seeing you again, giving you the notebook, telling you I made it?" He looked at the letter. "I imagined you had read that goodbye years ago." My throat tightened. "I wish I had. I know." He hesitated. "But I need you both to understand something. That letter mattered to me, but it was not the only thing that kept me going." Claire looked up, tears still on her face. "It wasn't, no." Ethan touched the blue notebook. "This did. The nights at the library did. The fact that someone looked at me before I had achieved anything and treated me like I already mattered." He turned to Claire gently. "What you hid was wrong, but you didn't erase what he gave me." Claire sobbed once quietly. "I'm grateful for that." So am I, Ethan said. Then he looked at me. And Mr. Beaumont, you didn't fail me because you couldn't find me. I had not known how badly I needed to hear those words until he said them. I should have done more. You did more than you knew. That doesn't feel like enough. He smiled sadly. Maybe love never feels like enough when we look backward. That sentence stayed with me. Maybe because it was true. I looked at Claire. Her shoulders were hunched, her face bare in a way I had not seen since she was a teenager. She no longer looked like the polished marketing director, the guarded woman who measured words like money. She looked like my daughter, frightened, ashamed, waiting to know whether the truth had cost her the last safe place she had. Claire, I said. She wiped her cheeks and looked at me. I forgive you. Her whole body seemed to collapse around the words, but I lifted a hand. Wait, let me finish. She froze. I forgive you because I do not want bitterness to own the rest of my life. I forgive you because I love you. I forgive you because I know you were hurt, and because I know grief twisted both of us in ways neither of us understood. Her lips trembled. But forgiveness does not mean this did not matter. It does not mean I will never feel anger. It does not mean you get to apologize once and have everything return to normal. I know, she whispered. No, I said gently. You need to really know it. Healing is not a curtain we pull over broken glass. It is picking up the pieces carefully one by one, even when our hands bleed. Claire nodded, crying again. I want to pick them up. Then start with Olivia. She looked confused. Olivia, yes. She believes in wonder. She believes in me. She believes in the sky. Do not punish her curiosity, because it reminds you of your pain. Claire covered her mouth. I continued. She should not have to make herself smaller so you can feel safe. Those words landed hard. Maybe because they were the truth Claire had once needed me to learn. She whispered, I've been doing that to her. A little. I thought I was protecting her from disappointment, or protecting yourself from watching her love something you never felt included in. Claire closed her eyes. Ethan said quietly, You can still be included. She looked at him. How? He smiled. Show up. The simplicity of it filled the room. Show up. Not perfectly, not dramatically, just show up. Claire took a shaky breath. When we get home, I'll tell Olivia the truth. I did not expect that. All of it? Claire nodded. In a way, she can understand. But yes, she deserves to know why I acted the way I did. And she deserves to know you were telling the truth. For the first time that day, I felt something in my chest loosen. Ethan stood then and walked to a side cabinet. He removed a slim rectangular case and brought it back. I have one more thing. He opened it. Inside was a mission patch, dark blue, silver stars, a small arc representing Earth. Near the bottom, stitched in tiny letters, was the mission name. Ethan took it out and placed it in my hand. This patch will fly with us during training, and then with me when I go up. I requested an extra one for you. I held it carefully. It's beautiful. He smiled. Look at the back. I turned it over. Written on the backing in permanent ink were the words, For Mr. Beaumont, the first launch pad. I could not speak. Ethan's voice softened. I know people will talk about scholarships and degrees and programs, but before any of that, there was your library, your telescope. your patience. That was my first launch pad. I pressed the patch against my palm. Claire watched us, and this time there was no jealousy in her face. Only grief, and something like understanding. I used to think, she said slowly, that if Dad helped you rise, it meant he left me behind. Ethan looked at her kindly. And now she looked at me. Now I think maybe he was trying to keep both of us from sinking. He just didn't always know how. I took her hand. No, I didn't. She squeezed mine. I didn't either. For the first time in years, we were not arguing over who had hurt more. We were admitting that we all had. A knock came at the door. The staff member peeked in. I'm sorry, Astronaut Brooks, they need you for the reception photos in 10 minutes. Ethan nodded. Thank you. When the door closed again, he turned to me. Will you come to the reception? If I won't be in the way. He laughed. Mr. Beaumont, half the people out there want to meet you. I shook my head. They want to meet the story. No, he said. They want to meet the man who made the story possible. Claire stood. Before we left, she turned to Ethan. I owe you an apology that I don't know how to give properly. Ethan waited. I was jealous of a child who had already lost almost everything. I took your goodbye because I was afraid of losing my father. That was cruel. I am sorry. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, Thank you for saying it plainly. She nodded, accepting that he did not immediately say it was okay, because it had not been okay. He continued, I forgive you too. But like your father said, forgiveness and healing are not the same day. Claire wiped her face. I understand. I hope you do, Ethan said gently. Because Olivia is watching you now. That struck her more deeply than anything else. I know. We walked to the reception together. Outside the room, the hallway seemed brighter. Or maybe I was simply lighter. People greeted Ethan as we passed. He introduced me to engineers, flight directors, communications staff, other astronauts. Every time he said, This is Mr. Beaumont, he did it with such pride that I felt embarrassed and honored in equal measure. At the reception, a photographer asked for a picture. Ethan stood on one side of me. Claire stood on the other. For a second, Claire hesitated, unsure whether she belonged in the frame. I reached for her. She stepped closer. The camera flashed. I do not know what that photograph showed to others. An astronaut, an old librarian, a daughter with red eyes. But I know what it captured for me. Not a perfect family, not a solved past, but the exact moment truth stopped being a weapon and became a doorway. That evening, back at the hotel, Claire knocked on my door. She stood in the hallway holding her phone. Olivia wants to video call. I let her in. Olivia appeared on the screen furious and tearful and excited all at once. Grandpa Mom told me everything. Claire winced. Not everything. Everything. Enough, Olivia said. I can't believe you met him. I can't believe Mom had the letter. I can't believe... Then she started crying. Oh, sweetheart, Claire whispered. Olivia looked at her mother through the screen. Why didn't you just tell the truth? Claire sat beside me on the bed. Because I was ashamed. And because sometimes people keep lying long after they know the truth, because they're afraid the truth will change how they are loved. Olivia's face softened. Did it? Claire looked at me, then back at her daughter. Yes, she said, but not in the way I feared. I put an arm around Claire's shoulders. She leaned into me. Olivia wiped her eyes. Grandpa. Yes. When you come home, can we do Star Night again? I looked at Claire. This time, she answered before I could. Yes, she said. We can. Olivia blinked. We, Claire smiled through tears. Yes, we. And in that small word, I heard the first real sound of my daughter coming home. When Claire and I returned to Ohio, the house looked different to me. Nothing had changed, not really. The porch still sagged on the left side. The maple roots still pushed against the walkway. The kitchen faucet still needed a careful hand unless a person wanted to get sprayed across the shirt. But after Houston, I no longer saw the house only as a place where grief had lived. I saw it as a place where something could begin again. Olivia arrived before we had even fully unpacked. Daniel pulled into my driveway, and she jumped out before the car had stopped completely. Olivia Claire called, half frightened, half laughing, but Olivia was already running toward me. I barely had time to set down my suitcase before she threw her arms around my waist. "You met him?" she said into my shirt. I did, and he remembered everything. More than I did. She pulled back, eyes wide. Did he really have the notebook? I nodded. And the letter? I looked at Claire. She stood beside Daniel near the car, her face pale but open. No more hiding. Not today. "Yes," I said. "The letter too." Olivia turned to her mother. For a moment I saw the sharp edge of a child's anger. Claire saw it too. She did not defend herself. "I'm sorry," Claire said softly. Olivia crossed her arms. "You already said that." "I know. And he'll probably need to say it more than once." That answer seemed to confuse Olivia. She had expected excuses. Claire gave her none. After a long silence, Olivia walked to her mother and hugged her. It was not the carefree hug she gave me. It was careful. But it was real. Daniel stood behind them with tears in his eyes. That evening we all sat at my kitchen table. Claire asked if we could read Ethan's letter together. I hesitated, then agreed. Some truths, once hidden too long, need witnesses. I unfolded the letter and read it aloud. When I reached the line, "If I ever get there, I will tell them about you," Olivia began crying. "He kept his promise," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "He did." Claire covered her mouth, but she did not look away. Afterward, she went upstairs alone. I found her 20 minutes later in her old bedroom, sitting on the floor beside the closet. Boxes surrounded her. Childhood trophies, school papers, Helen's old scarf, a cracked music box. Things I had kept because a father does not always know what memories his child may need later. Claire held a photograph in her hand. She was 8 years old in it, sitting on my shoulders during a 4th of July picnic, pointing up at fireworks. "I forgot this," she said. I sat beside her with some difficulty. "You loved fireworks. I loved being up high." I smiled. "You used to say you could see the whole world from my shoulders." She wiped her eyes. "I did feel loved, didn't I?" The question broke something in me. "Yes," I said. "I believe you did. Then I lost it." "No," I said. "We lost the language for it." She leaned her head against my shoulder. "I want to learn it again." So we began. Not with grand speeches, with small things. Claire came over the next weekend and helped me clean the shed. She did not mock the old tubs labeled Star Night. She opened them, dusted them, and asked what each thing was for. Daniel repaired the porch steps. Olivia made a new sign. "Welcome, stargazers." The sky was never a ceiling. When Claire saw it, she cried, but she hung it anyway. We posted a notice at the library, the community center, the church bulletin board, and online. I expected maybe 5 children, 10 if we were lucky. The night of the first revived Star Night, 47 people came. I know because Olivia counted. Children spread blankets across the lawn. Parents stood holding coffee. Teenagers pretended they were there only because younger siblings had dragged them along. Mrs. Evelyn Carter came with a lawn chair and a proud expression as if she had personally restarted the stars. Claire stood at the folding table pouring hot cocoa. At first, she looked uncomfortable. She asked too many practical questions. Do we need more cups? Is this cocoa too hot? Should we make people sign something? But slowly, as children began lining up for the telescope, I watched her change. A little girl in a purple jacket looked through the eyepiece and gasped. There are holes in the moon, craters, Olivia said, standing beside her like a young scientist. Claire smiled, not politely, truly. Later, a quiet boy lingered near the edge of the crowd, hands in his pockets, not unlike Ethan had done all those years ago. Claire noticed him before I did. She walked over with a cup of cocoa. You want a turn? She asked. The boy shrugged. Claire knelt slightly so her voice could meet him where he was. You don't have to know anything first. Looking is allowed. I heard that and had to turn away. Because healing sometimes arrives disguised as someone else using gentler words than they once received. Ethan could not attend that night, but he sent a video. We played it on a borrowed projector against the side wall of the library. When his face appeared, the children cheered, though most had only just learned his name. He wore a blue NASA jacket. Behind him was a training facility I could not identify. Hello, Marlowe, he said. And hello, Mr. Beaumont. Everyone turned to look at me. I waved awkwardly. Ethan smiled through the screen. When I was a boy, I stood on that same lawn and looked through an old telescope. I did not have much money. I did not have much confidence. But I had a dream, and I had one adult who refused to laugh at it. The crowd grew quiet. So, if you are standing there tonight with a dream that feels too big, too strange, or too far away, please hear me. Big dreams do not belong only to children with perfect lives. They belong to the ones brave enough to keep looking up. Olivia stood beside me, holding my hand. Ethan continued. Mr. Beaumont once told me the sky was never a ceiling. He was right. But I want to add something. Sometimes the first sky you break through is not above your head. It is the one people built inside your mind when they told you what you could never become. Claire wiped tears from her face with the back of her hand. The video ended with Ethan holding up the mission patch. This one is for every child at Star Night. And for the librarian who gave me my first launch pad. The applause that followed was smaller than NASA's auditorium, of course. But to me, it felt just as powerful. Weeks passed, then months. Star Night became monthly again. Not large, not fancy, but alive. Claire handled sign-ups and supplies. Daniel managed equipment. Olivia became the official Junior Sky Guide, a title she invented and printed on a homemade badge. I mostly stood by the telescope, helping one child after another find the moon. The old house changed too. Not because we renovated everything, though. Daniel did fix the faucet at last. It changed because Claire came over more. Sometimes with groceries, sometimes with Olivia, sometimes alone. We talked about Helen, about grief, about money, about the years we had both survived badly. There were still hard conversations. Forgiveness did not make us graceful overnight. Some days Claire cried. Some days I got quiet. Once we argued about whether she had ruined 20 years. I told her she had wounded them, not ruined them. There is a difference. Wounded years can still teach. Ruined years only sit in ashes. She wrote to Ethan, too. A real letter, not an email. She apologized again without asking for comfort in return. Ethan wrote back 3 weeks later. He thanked her for her honesty and told her that the best apology she could offer was to help another child feel seen. Claire framed that line and placed it on her desk at work. The day Ethan launched into space, we watched from my living room. Claire. Daniel, Olivia, Evelyn, Mr. Alvarez, and half the neighborhood squeezed into the house. Someone brought muffins. Someone else brought tissues. I sat in my old chair, wearing the mission patch Ethan had given me, pinned to my cardigan, like a medal I did not deserve, but cherished anyway. When the rocket lifted, the room erupted. Olivia screamed. Claire grabbed my hand. On the television, fire carried Ethan Brooks into the sky. The boy who had asked if people like him could go to space. The boy whose goodbye had waited 20 years to be read. The man who had kept his promise. Days later, a message arrived from orbit. NASA posted it publicly, but Ethan had clearly made it for us. He floated weightless, smiling like a child who had finally outrun gravity. "Mr. Beaumont," he said, "I'm looking down at Earth right now. Ohio is under clouds, but I know where you are." I laughed and cried at the same time. He continued, "To every child watching from a small town, a hard home, a crowded apartment, a hospital bed, or anywhere, dreams feel impossible. Keep looking up. And to the adults, be careful with your words. You may think you are only encouraging a child for a moment. That child may carry your words all the way to the stars." Olivia leaned forward, eyes shining. After the video ended, she turned to me. "Grandpa?" "Yes, I think I want to be an aerospace engineer." Claire inhaled sharply. For 1 second, the old fear flashed across her face. Then she smiled. A real smile. "Then we'd better start with math," she said. Olivia groaned. Everyone laughed. I looked at my daughter, my granddaughter, and the old telescope standing near the window. For the first time in many years, I did not feel like a man waiting for proof. The proof was everywhere, in Ethan's voice from space, in Claire's hand resting gently on Olivia's shoulder, in the children gathering every month beneath the stars, in the letter finally read, in the apology finally spoken, in the truth that kindness, even when buried, even when doubted, even when stolen for a while, has a way of finding its orbit back. I am an old man now. I do not know how many star nights I have left, but I know this. A dream does not always begin with money, talent, or opportunity. Sometimes it begins with one tired adult staying late in a library during a storm. Sometimes it begins with a broken cardboard rocket. Sometimes it begins when someone looks at a child the world has dismissed and says, "No one gets to decide the height of your life except you." And sometimes, if grace is generous, that child grows up, touches the stars, and sends the light back home. Life does not always reward kindness quickly. Sometimes the good we do disappears from sight. Sometimes the people closest to us misunderstand our hearts. Sometimes even our own family refuses to believe the truth we have carried quietly for years. But that does not mean the truth is gone. It may simply be traveling farther than we can see. Roger Beaumont never gave Ethan Brooks money, power, or fame. He gave him something smaller and greater at the same time: belief. A sentence, a telescope, a safe place to dream. And that was enough to help a frightened boy survive long enough to become the man he was meant to be. This story reminds us that words matter. Encouragement matters. The way we treat children matters. A small kindness may not look important in the moment, but to someone who is hurting, it can become a lifeline. It can become the voice they hear when the world tells them to quit. It also reminds us that family wounds need truth before they can heal. Claire's pain did not excuse what she did, but honesty opened the door that denial had kept closed for 20 years. Forgiveness was not instant. Healing was not simple. But love became possible again when the truth was finally spoken. So, if someone once believed in you when no one else did, carry that light forward. And if you have the chance to believe in someone today, do not wait. You may never know how far your words will travel. If this story touched your heart, please tell me in the comments. Have you ever been doubted by your own family? Who was the person who believed in you? And where are you watching from? And what time is it there right now? If you enjoy emotional family stories with justice, healing, and hope, please like this video and subscribe so we can meet again in the next story.